Chapter 1817. Not long after Elder Tan left, two men in black came in. They glanced at Feng Jiu, who was in the metal room, and went forward to open the black iron lock of the metal room. They went forward and directly put a black bag on Feng Jiu's head, took her, and walked out. In the dark, Elder Tan watched and sighed softly. In the end, he shook his head and quietly left, his figure disappearing into the night. Feng Jiu only felt that she was being pushed by the two men. She couldn't see clearly and didn't know where she was being taken until she was brought into a transportation array by the two men. Because of the dense spiritual aura of the array, even if she couldn't see, she could feel it. She was even more surprised. Did this treasure trove building have a transportation array? Wasn't it just moving her to another place? Why did they need to use a transportation array? Although she was surprised, she didn't say anything. These two men were only in charge of escorting her. Even if she asked, it would be a waste of time. Her arms were held by the two men in black. Under a strong suction force, even if she couldn't see, she could feel the world spinning. Her feet didn't touch the ground, as if she had entered a transportation space. After spinning for a while, her feet stepped on the ground again. What hit her in the face was a different aura. It was the smell of blood, a bloodthirsty and ferocious aura. She heard the sound of swords clashing and a low shout. The black bag over her head was removed, and she saw the scene in front of her clearly. It was a huge square. The ground was covered with yellow sand, without any green leaves or grass. There were a few iron cages around the square, in which were sleeping ferocious beasts. At the side of the square, there were a few men sitting on the ground. Some of those people were teenagers, some were young men in their 20s, and some were men in their 30s. There were all kinds of people, but they all had the same vigilance and ruthlessness. When she suddenly appeared here, those people narrowed their bloodthirsty eyes and sized her up. Then they coldly looked away. Go! The two black-clothed men beside her pushed her, and she could only follow them. With a face full of fear, she followed the two black-clothed men around the square to a house behind the mountain. It was a simple and crude house, but it was the best place to be. Other than the few powerful demonic cultivators guarding outside the house, the people inside the house seemed to have unfathomable strength. Elder Ghost, there's a new kid. The two men in black who were escorting her stood respectfully outside the door and saluted. Without the permission of the people inside, they didn't even dare to enter. Didn't you say it's about time? Why did you send someone here? An enigmatic voice came from inside. The voice was soft and feminine, but it made people's hearts tremble like a venomous snake. Replying to Senior Gue, Senior Feng asked me to bring him here. He said that this fellow is simple and honest. If he is properly trained, he might be of great use. Really? Bring it in and let me have a look. The voice came from inside again, and Feng Jiu was dragged in by the two men. After entering, Feng Jiu swallowed her saliva. Her body trembled slightly, and her face was pale as she looked at the person lying on the soft couch. It was a middle-aged man who looked to be in his 40s or 50s. However, his body was thin and small, as if a gust of wind could blow him away. Even his face was thin and long, with a mix of green and white. He looked very weak. Chapter 1818. In the embrace of this cold, tall, and skinny middle-aged man, there was currently a half-naked enchanting woman. The woman meekly nestled beside him. Her body was exposed, but she was not afraid of the gazes of others. Instead, under the teasing of Elder Ghost's hands, she even let out a low moan. The two black-clothed men who came in didn't dare to raise their heads. They didn't even dare to look, as if they were afraid that they would get into trouble. As for Feng Jiu, her face was pale as she stared blankly. Her gaze carried just the right amount of fear, no matter how one looked at it. She was a young man who was so scared that he didn't know how to react. Seeing the ghost elder's bloodthirsty eyes move around her body and size her up, she didn't move at all. She only swallowed her saliva. Where is this? I want to go home. Go home? Ha ha. The ghost elder seemed to have heard something funny and let out a sinister laugh. After entering the palace of the King of Hell, you are all little ghosts under my command. Go home. Ha ha. wishful thinking. When the sinister voice fell, he suddenly flicked his hand, and a stream of air landed on Fengjiu's body. In that instant, Fengjiu instinctively wanted to attack, but she still forcibly endured it. Because the stream of air landed on her body, she instinctively let out an ah sound. She opened her mouth slightly, and the ghost elder flicked a pill into her mouth. Ugh! She clutched her throat with both hands and made an appearance as if she wanted to vomit the medicine out. The moment she lowered her head, bent her waist, and opened her mouth to vomit, she caught a glimpse of the waist tag that elder ghost dropped on the ground. When she saw the waist tag, her pupils shrank, and in almost an instant, she covered up the abnormality in her eyes. Take him out. The people outside will teach him the rules. The ghost elder waved his hand and said. He narrowed his eyes and no longer paid attention to them. Instead, he teased the woman in his embrace, causing her to laugh. When they arrived outside, the two black-clothed men pushed Fengjiu onto the plaza and turned around to report back. When the two people left, Fengjiu pretended to cough and spat out the pill under her tongue and put it away. Although she didn't eat it, she knew that it was the poison that controlled these people. Although her body was immune to poison, it was best not to eat this kind of thing. Moreover, she also wanted to research what kind of poison it was. She walked on the plaza. Because the sky wasn't very bright, the light wasn't very good. In addition, these people's faces were either covered in mud or dried blood, so she couldn't see their faces too clearly. However, what was certain was that none of them were easy to provoke. Like wild animals, their eyes gave off a bloodthirsty aura. It was as if they would pounce on her if she dared take one step closer, and they would tear her. Finding an empty corner, she curled up into a ball and hugged her legs as she looked around and the people around her. Looking at this scene and then at these people, she suddenly understood where she was. However, in this place, other than those people who were devil cultivators, the majority of the people here weren't devil cultivators like her. Moreover, when she glanced at the waist tag, she saw the words Temple of Darkness engraved on it. Chapter 18-19. In the darkness of the night, a blood-curdling scream suddenly rang out. Immediately after, she, who was sitting in a corner, saw two devil cultivators dragging a man who was on the verge of death over and pushing an iron cage to the center of the square. She saw that the man's shoulder had been slashed, and fresh blood kept flowing. He was pressed to the ground by two devil cultivators, who used a dagger to cut off the back of his foot. Ah! A mournful scream rang out once again, breaking the silence of the night. The two devil cultivators pushed the man who had his foot cut off into the cage that held the ferocious beast. Immediately after, under the gazes of the surrounding people, the ferocious beast in the cage tore the man apart, and the man's mournful and sharp screams. The bloody scene of the internal organs being hollowed out happened just like that in front of them. The surroundings were so quiet that not a single sound could be heard. Only the heavy breathing of those who saw this scene could be heard. This is the result of running away. Take a good look and remember it well. Once you're here, don't even mention the fact that you can't escape from our palms. Even if you can't escape from this place. The devil cultivator's fierce voice carried a strong warning as it spread through the air, clearly entering everyone's ears. Seeing everyone's stiff expressions, the two devil cultivators snorted and turned to leave, leaving only the bloody scene in the iron cage that held the ferocious beast. As the sky gradually brightened, several devil cultivators followed behind Elder Ghost and walked over. They only stopped when they reached the center of the square. The ghost doctor's cold gaze swept across everyone in the square, and only then did his voice ring out. Everyone gather here. As soon as the voice rang out, everyone consciously stood up and walked to the front. The bloody cage in the middle of the square had already been moved to the side. Fengjiu also walked forward with those people. However, among the nearly 400 people, she probably looked the thinnest and smallest. She couldn't squeeze to the front, so she could only stand at the back and listen. Some of you have been here for 3 or 4 months, and some of you have just entered. There are a total of 378 of you, and there are those who are in their teens to 30s. Then, do you know why you were captured here? Elder Ghost's sinister voice rang out in the square, but no one spoke. They all quietly listened and watched. You don't know? If you don't know, I'll tell you. His voice suddenly became vicious as he shouted in a low voice. Among the 378 of you, only the one who survives will be qualified to become a spy for the Temple of Darkness. You are the spies that we want to infiltrate the 4 great sects. Are you wondering why I told you that you're a spy for the 4 major sects? Ha! Elder Gue laughed sinisterly. That's because we don't need too many spies. We'll have rounds of death and elimination. You won't be able to escape from here. If you don't want to die, then you can only fight. You can only try your best to think of a way to survive. Otherwise, what awaits you will only be a hair-raising death. I believe that after seeing the way the eliminated person died, you all would definitely not wish for the eliminated person to be yourselves. Fengjiu, who was standing at the back of the crowd, couldn't help but frown when he heard this. Elimination by death? A spy sent to the 4 major sects? What was the Temple of Darkness trying to do? Chapter 1820. The newcomer, come over here. Once Elder Ghost's voice came out from the front, everyone followed his line of sight and landed on the skinny youth in green clothes at the very back. In their eyes, this youth was the weakest among all of them. Fengjiu, who was standing at the very back, saw everyone's gazes land on him. He hesitated for a moment before walking forward with some fear. Perhaps it was because of Elder Ghost's words, but the people blocking the way all moved to the side to make a path for him. "WH, what are you doing?" Fengjiu asked with a trembling voice. He looked at Elder Ghost with a very weak expression, and his legs trembled slightly. He nothing. Elder Ghost narrowed his small eyes and revealed a sinister sneer. You look like a soft-footed shrimp, but that old thing still brought you in. Since it's like this, I naturally have to treat you a little differently. When everyone heard this, they all had different expressions. No one knew what they were thinking. Fengjiu waved his hand and suppressed the fear on his face. He said embarrassedly, "No, you don't have to treat me special. I'll be the same as everyone else." This old thing, with his sinister smile, it was obvious that he was up to no good. Elder Ghost narrowed his eyes and stared at Fengjiu. He laughed sinisterly. "Wait until you pass this stage. This death elimination will start with you." As soon as he finished speaking, he waved his hand, and a ferocious beast appeared beside him. Roar! It was a ferocious beast at the peak of the holy beast level. It was ferocious and was called the demonic corroding tiger. It was different from the commonly seen tiger species. This demonic corroding tiger's fur was as hard as iron. 2 sharp tiger fangs that were about the length of a finger protruded from its mouth. There were 3 red patterns on the left and right sides of the tiger's face. Its bloodthirsty eyes revealed a ferocity that made one's heart tremble. This was Elder Ghost's contracted beast, a ferocious beast that was only 1 step away from becoming a divine beast. Now, he had summoned it just like that. When everyone saw this ferocious beast, their eyes flashed, and they could not help but take a few steps back. They stared at the demonic corroding tiger in a defensive manner. Elder Ghost had suddenly summoned this demonic corroding tiger. Even the strongest person among them would find it difficult to fight this ferocious beast alone. However, at this moment, some people's gazes fell on Fengjiu with complicated expressions. They saw that the green-clothed youth standing at the front had a confused expression. His body trembled, and his face was pale as he stared with his eyes and mouth wide open as he stared at the ferocious beast that had suddenly appeared in front of him. He did not know whether he was scared or not, as he did not know how to retreat. Or not. The ghost elder squinted his eyes and rubbed the head of the corroding demon tiger beside him. His eyes, however, stared at Fengjiu sinisterly. "Go, bite off this brat's leg." As soon as she finished speaking, the corrosive devil tiger let out a ferocious roar. Its entire body shot forward, its mouth wide open, revealing its sharp, bloodthirsty fangs as it pounced towards Fengjiu. Fengjiu stared blankly. She stared blankly until she heard Elder Ghost's words. When she saw the majestic and ferocious corroding devil tiger roar and pounce at her with its mouth wide open and its fangs bared, She let out a sharp and panicked scream, as if she was frightened. Ah! Her voice was sharp and ear-piercing. It carried with it the pressure of a Foundation establishment cultivator. It suddenly rang out and pierced through everyone's eardrums while they were still in shock. Their eardrums hurt, and their hearts suddenly jumped. Chapter 1821. Roar! The devil-corroding tiger missed its target and suddenly stopped in its tracks. The dust and smoke that it had kicked up as it charged forward had instantly obstructed its vision. When it could see clearly, its eyes were filled with rage. A puny human had actually dared to escape from its mouth. He was truly audacious. At that moment, it quickly turned around and swept its ferocious gaze around. Its gaze fell on the green figure that was screaming while running forward. Without waiting for its master's orders, it roared angrily and pounced forward with its four hooves. Roar! Ah! The ferocious beast's furious roar was accompanied by the green-robed youth's panic scream. Seeing the youth being chased by a ferocious beast, the 300 or so people were all dumbfounded. That youth was only at the Foundation establishment stage. That ferocious beast was at the peak of the holy beast stage. How had that youth managed to escape from the tiger's mouth? Now, he was running around the entire plaza. That ferocious beast had chased him round and round, yet it still hadn't managed to bite him. Seeing the sand in the plaza being kicked up by the man and the tiger, creating rings of sand and dust that blurred their vision, they couldn't help but return to their senses and look at the spectral elder in front of them. Did the spectral elder really release his contracted ferocious beast to take the youth's life? Although the people here were all savage and inhumane, didn't they say that they were going to be trained as spies? Even if they were going to be eliminated by death, they shouldn't be using such a brutal and direct method, right? Forget about the skinny, green-robed youth. Even the strongest among them probably wouldn't be able to escape from the ferocious beast's mouth. The green-robed youth hadn't been bitten to death, yet only because he still had some strength left. Once his strength was almost depleted, it would probably be a bloody scene. Seeing this, the spectral elder's eyes narrowed as a glint flashed through them. His gaze stared at the green-robed youth who was running around the plaza in a panic as he pondered. The pressure that emanated from a youth was indeed only that of a Foundation establishment cultivator. Even as he ran and screamed in panic, the pressure that emanated from his voice was indeed that of a Foundation establishment cultivator. Furthermore, there didn't seem to be anything strange about his running. The path he was running in was all panicked, and his footsteps were just common steps. If there was anything special about him, it would be that he ran faster than others. How should he put it? How should he describe it? He thought for a moment, and a thought flashed through his mind. That's right, this young man's current appearance was like a frightened rabbit, scurrying around in a panic under the tiger's mouth. Roar! The eroding devil tiger and the twin tigers were on the verge of spitting fire. Each roar was louder and louder than the last. There was a sense of defeat in their hearts, but there was also a burning anger. Damned humans! Damned young man! He ran faster than a rabbit. It did not believe that it could not catch up to him. Ah! Help! Help! Don't bite me! Don't bite me! Feng Jiu shouted in panic as he ran. He was panting, and his speed seemed to have slowed down. His green robe fluttered in the wind as he ran. The corrosive devil tiger behind him pounced and almost bit down on the robe. Instead, it ate a mouthful of sand and became even more frenzied. Roar! Humans! This king, and you are irreconcilable. Chapter 1822. However, at that moment, the young man who had fallen to the ground somehow mustered up his courage. He bent his leg and fiercely kicked out. Even though he was a Foundation establishment cultivator, if that kick had landed on the corroding demon tiger's body or leg, it wouldn't have had much of an effect. However, that kick had landed on the weakest part of the body that both men and beasts couldn't handle. Naturally, the effect was different. Oh, a shrill cry of agony came from the mouth of the corroding demon tiger that had pounced forward. Because that kick had landed on an important part of its body, it couldn't muster any strength in its body. It was in so much pain that it shrank to a tenth of its size. Immediately after, there was the sound of it falling heavily to the ground. Bang! That corroding demon tiger half curled up and pounced forward. However, its posture was a little different, because it had retracted its front claws and clamped its hind legs tightly together as it pounced to the ground. Furthermore, after it pounced to the ground, it only let out a pained howl. Its hind legs were still trembling slightly, as if it was enduring some kind of intense pain in its spine. Seeing this scene, the corners of everyone's mouths twitched slightly. They subconsciously clamped their legs together, faintly feeling the throbbing pain. A foundation establishment cultivator had viciously kicked the weakest part of its body. This wasn't something that anyone could withstand. Otherwise, a dignified beast at the peak of the holy beast level wouldn't have curled up on the ground and let out a pained howl. Elder Ghost's eyes flashed slightly. He glanced at the young man who had dodged and fallen to the ground. He was a little surprised. He didn't think that this young man would be able to survive under the claws of his beast. It seemed that Elder Feng had sent this person here for a reason. Perhaps it was because he had taken a fancy to his speed that was different from normal people and his unique trait of not playing by the rules. If that was the case, it would be a pity to let him die like this. Why not? With a wave of his hand, the corroding demon tiger that was lying on the ground disappeared before everyone's eyes. He didn't say anything and just turned around to leave, leaving everyone there to look at each other. Fengjiu lowered her head slightly and panted heavily. In reality, a cold smile flashed across her lowered eyes. Was she someone who was willing to be taken advantage of? Since he had released that beast and wanted to bite off one of her legs, she would cripple its third leg first. Her kick had at most caused the beast to suffer a little and suffer a little. However, if it wanted to lift its third leg, it would be difficult. Since she wanted to cultivate a spy, she naturally had to have some merit. If she was weak, she would naturally be killed. Since that was the case, she didn't mind, of course. After returning to the wooden house, Elder Ghost allowed the woman behind him to massage his shoulders. He narrowed his eyes and ordered the demonic cultivators that followed him, "Make the arrangements. Within 3 days, I want to see the people who have been eliminated." Yes, a few demonic cultivators responded, then turned around and walked out. Returning to the square, they gathered everyone and pointed at the forest outside the square. "Do you see that forest in front? Go to the other end of the forest in 3 days. Those who don't arrive before sunset, and those who stay in the forest will all die." Bloodthirsty paused, raking through the others. Moreover, they will be dismembered. Chapter 1823. When the 300-plus people heard this, they all fell silent. They were confused about the unknown future. Or it could be said that ever since they were caught and brought here, they had been poisoned and controlled by others. Their lives were no longer their own. Right now, if they didn't want to die, the only thing they could do was to try their best to survive, even if they had to live as spies with a shameful identity. How big is this forest? How long will it take to cross it normally? Are there any weapons or medicine for us to defend ourselves? Is there a map? When we reach the other side of the forest, will there be anyone to pick us up? In the crowd, a man in his 30s asked in a calm voice. A few questions pointed out the most crucial point. While attracting the attention of the demonic cultivators, Fengjiu also glanced at that person. The man in his 30s had a bloodthirsty aura. It could be seen that he was a very iron-blooded person. Even if he was standing, his back was straight. His entire body had an aura like that of a cheetah. Fengjiu was a little surprised that such a person would be captured. It seemed that the strength of the people sent to capture them was not ordinary. One of the demonic cultivators glanced at the crowd and said, "This forest is neither big nor small. Some people can't walk out of it even after a month. Some can naturally walk out of it in 3 days. There will be 2 maps. As for where it is, you will have to find it in the forest." The voice of the demonic cultivator paused for a moment. He glanced at them and sneered. "As for weapons and medicine, before you officially become spies, it's impossible for you to have these things. And the weapons you use in this square are not allowed to be brought into the forest. Violators will die." After giving some instructions, The 300 people were brought to the entrance of the forest. Looking at the weeds that were half the height of a person and the messy trees, Fengjiu couldn't help but sigh. This forest doesn't even seem to have a path. Other than not being able to get lost here, we still have to find a way out and avoid being hunted. These people of the sacred beasts of the night are indeed not good people. She had a feeling that if 378 people went in, there would not even be 78 of them coming out. She knew very well that a spy must be the best of the best. Only those who could avoid danger and survive had the qualifications to become a spy. Moreover, for spies, as long as they were good, it didn't matter how many there were. If those spies made a move in the dark, the death rate would be very high. Although she didn't know any of the people here, she couldn't bear to see them die for no reason, especially when some of them were teenagers. How could a teenager, at such a young age, survive such a cruel elimination of death? Moreover, there were nearly 400 people, but there were only 2 maps. He was afraid that there would be another battle between people once they reached the inner regions. Thinking of this, she gently exhaled. Forget it. She'd better walk a little slower so that she wouldn't become everyone's target if she walked to the front. Therefore, with her intention to fall behind, she gradually separated herself from the group. The people in front of her didn't pay any attention to her. They thought that a thin and weak youth walking in the forest naturally wouldn't be able to walk as fast as on a flat road. Chapter 1824. Many of them became vigilant because they knew that things were not that simple. Those people would not just stop them from moving forward. They would definitely make a move in secret. If that was the case, they had to be careful. Whoosh! The sharp sound of an arrow piercing through the air was heard. With a whoosh, it shot into the group of people. Some of them immediately fell to the ground. Some of them quickly dodged. Some of them fell due to the push and shove. Some of them had their arms cut by the arrow. Only one person was unable to react in time, and the arrow pierced through his heart. That person groaned, his eyes wide open as he fell to the ground. His body twitched slightly, his eyes filled with unwillingness. However, he still breathed his last under the shocked gazes of the people around him. Everyone's hearts beat violently at this moment, as if they were about to jump out of their chests. They knew that things would not be that simple. They did not know when the murderous intent had descended. "Look, there's something," a man shouted and quickly stepped forward to pull out the arrow. He took a small brocade pouch that was hanging on the arrow and opened it. There was a map inside. "It's a map." He looked at the others and took in their expressions. Finally, he said, "Does anyone have anything to say?" There were about a dozen people here, and there were about a dozen people around. The rest were scattered. He knew very well that this path was not easy to take. At least, if he were to rely on his own strength, he was afraid that he would have to face greater danger. If he could join forces with the others, his chances of survival would be greater. Although these dozens of people were on guard against each other, they were not stupid. It was precisely because they knew that it would be more dangerous to move alone that they had intentionally or unintentionally walked together. Now that they heard this, they looked at each other. "After we get the map, let's all go together. If we encounter danger, we can help each other." One of them said, "I agree." Another person said, "All right." Then it's settled. However, who will hold the map? Hearing this, everyone fell silent again. They looked around and finally fixed their eyes on the person holding the map. "He will hold it. If we go together, it doesn't matter who holds it." However, just as this person finished speaking, 5 demonic cultivators suddenly rushed out and attacked the dozens of people with their swords. The other party's attacks were swift and fierce, making it clear that they wanted to kill them. Moreover, there was no limit to their targets. It was obvious that wherever the tip of their swords pointed, they would kill whoever it was pointed at. What they wanted to do was to disperse these people and eliminate some of them. Only those who could survive would be able to become spies. Therefore, among these 378 people, in their opinion, there would only be less than a dozen people who could survive. "Don't go. Let's join forces to deal with them," one of the men shouted. However, in the face of the sudden killing intent, those people scattered and fled in all directions. Only a few people circulated the spiritual energy in their bodies and waved their fists at those demonic cultivators. Compared to running away and surviving, they wanted to use their fists to survive. The demonic cultivator. Chapter 1825. The four of them panted slightly as they looked at the fallen demonic cultivator. They looked at each other and finally smiled. The wariness between them disappeared at this moment. They were like comrades who had fought side by side for many years. In their first battle, they worked together to achieve victory. Lei Xiao, a cultivator in the middle stage of the Golden Core stage. He was originally a rogue cultivator, but was accidentally caught. One of the men said and introduced himself to the three people in front of him. Su San, a rogue mercenary in the early stage of the Golden Core stage. A man in his 20s said, He Sheng, a rogue cultivator in the middle stage of the Golden Core stage. Another man said, My name is Lin Shi. I snuck out to play and was caught too. Unlike the rest of you, I'm only a cultivator in the middle stage of the foundation establishment stage. The one who spoke was a teenager who looked to be about 15 or 16 years old. He was very young, but his temperament was not ordinary. Otherwise, he would not have been able to survive for 2 or 3 months in here. The few of them looked at each other and nodded. Then let's support each other along the way. I hope we can all survive. Thus, the few of them took the items from the demonic cultivator's body and continued to walk forward. The map was not in their hands, so they could only keep walking forward. Fortunately, the few of them worked together to kill a cultivator in the early stage of the nascent soul stage. Compared to the others, they had more trust in each other. Not long after the few of them left, Fengjiu picked up a tree branch from somewhere and walked forward step by step. He used the branch to push aside the weeds and leaves in front of him while paying attention to his surroundings. When he came to the front and saw the dead demonic cultivator, a look of surprise flashed across his eyes. He did not stop and continued to walk forward. After walking for a while, he suddenly heard a shrill scream. The sound reverberated in the forest. If he listened carefully, he could tell where it came from. There was indeed an ambush. She sighed in her heart. As she walked, she felt a cold, murderous intent behind her. She turned around and saw a demonic cultivator in the nascent soul stage holding a long sword coming toward her. Seeing this, she smiled at the demonic cultivator. When the demonic cultivator saw the smile on the young man's face, he was stunned. He thought to himself, Is this a fool? Can't you see that you're about to die? How can you still smile? The tip of the sword did not stop, but in the next moment, a shocking shock occurred. The young man stood there without moving. When the tip of the sword pierced forward, he tilted his face slightly to avoid the sword. At the same time, he raised a branch in his hand and pointed forward at a speed that was too fast for one to cover one's ears. Yes. The demonic cultivator let out a muffled groan, and his entire body froze in place. A trace of blood leaked out from the corner of his mouth. His eyes were wide open as he stared at the harmless-looking young man in front of him. He looked at the young man with a faint smile on his face, but the young man had taken his life with a single move. Bang! As his body fell backwards, Fengjiu pulled out the branch that had pierced into his chest. She watched as the devil cultivator twitched a few times before dying. She sighed softly. You came looking for death yourself. You can't blame me. He threw the tree branch to the other side and took the items on the devil cultivator's body. Only then did he continue forward, his figure disappearing into the tall grass. After walking for a while, someone set their sights on Fengjiu, and the result of going against her was naturally death. Chapter 1826. Over a dozen nascent soul cultivators have died in less than half a day. The spectral elder narrowed his eyes as a sliver of thought flashed through his eyes. Have the corpses been brought back? They've been brought back. They've all been placed outside according to the time they were discovered, a demon cultivator said with a serious expression. Over a dozen nascent soul cultivators had died in less than half a day. That was basically half of the people they sent out. Moreover, among the 300 or so people, The strongest was only at the peak of the golden core realm. However, just like that, they had silently taken care of over a dozen nascent soul cultivators without alerting anyone. How could they not be shocked? Could it be that there was a powerful person hiding among the 300 or so people? However, if there really was someone like that, they shouldn't have been captured by them. What was the reason? The spectral elder walked out from inside and looked at the dozen or so corpses in front of the room. He swept his sharp and vicious gaze over them and began to examine the first corpse. A fatal blow to the chest. There's a small hole. It's not from a blade or a hidden weapon. Looking at the hole, it should be from a tree branch. Moreover, it's a blunt tree branch that hasn't been sharpened. The spectral elder examined the corpse as he said, "Nascent soul cultivators already have powerful defenses. To be able to use a blunt tree branch to pierce through his chest and kill him in one strike, this person isn't simple. Could there be a powerful person hiding among the 378 people?" A demon cultivator on the side could not help but ask. Hearing that, the spectral elder glanced at him and sneered. "Do you think I'm blind? If those 300 or so people really had such skills, how could I not have seen it?" Hearing that, the demon cultivator could not help but lower his eyes. He did not dare to say anything else, as he was afraid that the spectral elder would vent his anger on him. The spectral elder looked at the second person and saw that his throat had been slit in one strike. Moreover, there were no signs of battle on his body. He could not help but narrow his eyes and look at the next person. He saw that all of them had been killed in one strike, and it was not a sneak attack either. As a result, he could conclude that this person's strength was definitely at the fairy realm. Only someone at the fairy realm had the ability to kill a nascent soul cultivator in one strike. Moreover, he didn't think that there was such a person hiding among the 378 people. On the contrary, someone must have snuck into their territory. Send a few fairy realm cultivators into the forest to take a look. Someone must have snuck in. I want to see who it is that dares to sneak into the territory of the Temple of Darkness. Understood. A demonic cultivator replied and quickly left. Elder Ghost paced back and forth with his hands behind his back. After a while, he instructed, "Send another group of people in. Tell them to form teams of 2. They can only attack the spies appropriately, but they can't kill them. Otherwise, there won't be many left. Tell them to pay more attention and see if there are any suspicious people." "Yes," the other demonic cultivator replied and left in a flash. "You go too. Go in and play with those people." Elder Ghost glanced at the seductive woman in revealing clothes behind him. "Since you are willing to let me go, then I will go." The girl went forward and gently nestled into Elder Guay's embrace. Her hands brushed across his chest before she gently covered her red lips and smiled. She twisted her slender waist and headed towards the dense forest. Chapter 1827. In the forest, Fengjiu was being chased by a nascent soul cultivator. She took to her heels and scurried around, shouting, "Ah, help! Help! Damn it, is this kid a rabbit? He can run so fast." The nascent soul cultivator cursed under his breath. He thought that this young man was too skinny and weak to be a spy. Since he coincidentally met him, he wanted to get rid of him first. Who would have thought that, because of the weeds and trees here, he wouldn't be able to catch up to the youth after escaping? Seeing that the youth was only about 10 meters away from him, he couldn't help but feel a little angry in his heart. He also went head-to-head with the youth, determined to take his little life no matter what. "Ah, help, help!" As Fengjiu ran, she pushed aside the weeds in front of her and scurried around. Occasionally, she would meet some people around her, but when they saw that she was being chased by a nascent soul cultivator, their expressions changed, and they quickly avoided her. Well, in here, even self-preservation was a problem. Why would they care about other people's lives? Moreover, the person behind her was a nascent soul cultivator. Most of the people here were not a match for a nascent soul cultivator. After all, if they did not team up, how could a golden core cultivator kill a nascent soul cultivator? However, there were always exceptions to everything. In front of them, a group of men who were walking together heard the voice behind them. They turned around at the same time, and when they saw that the person who had cried out for help was the youth who had been chased by the corroding demon tiger, their expressions changed slightly. "It's him, that young man." "Yeah, I didn't expect that young man to still be alive after half a day. He runs so fast, it's not strange that he's still alive. Look, the devil cultivator chasing him is a nascent soul cultivator. Should we save him?" When this question was asked, the men looked at each other and laughed. Two of them immediately retreated to the left and right. They also pulled open a rope, but it was hidden in the weeds and could not be seen. The other two quietly jumped onto a tree with lush leaves, waiting for an opportunity. Fengjiu saw it and glanced at them discreetly. He saw that the rope was left on the ground and was not pulled up. She was slightly surprised and ran over there. After running over the rope, she kicked a small stone. Her whole body fell forward as if she had lost her balance and fell to the ground. "Stinking brat, let's see where you can run to this time." When the nascent soul cultivator saw this, he let out a hearty laugh and charged forward with his sword in hand. Just as he was about to slash at her, the rope hidden in the weeds on the ground was suddenly pulled up. The people on the left and right crossed over, trapping the nascent soul cultivator. At the same time, the two people on the tree jumped down and attacked the nascent soul cultivator with their sharp blades. The devil cultivator was startled. Just as he was about to use the sword in his hand to cut the rope, he discovered that it was the Vajra rope that they were equipped with. Seeing the fierce killing intent coming at him, he immediately raised the sword in his hand to block it. Clang! When the sword and blade collided, there was a clear sound of collision. However, when the sword and blade collided, the two people who had jumped down from the tree were sent flying by the nascent soul cultivator's airflow. They fell heavily into the weeds behind them. Pooh! Chapter 1828. The two of them were flung out and slammed heavily into the big tree. The two people who got up from the ground and pounced forward again, each holding onto his legs in an attempt to pull him down. Seeing this scene, the other two people pulled out their swords and stabbed forward. At this moment, two men around them also joined the battle. In an instant, there were 6 people instead of 4. With the 6 of them working together, the demonic cultivator was unable to kill them. Fengjiu, who had fallen to the ground, looked at the 6 people besieging the demonic cultivator, and her eyes flashed. In the next moment, she picked up the Vajra rope and pounced forward to wrap it around the demonic cultivator's neck, tightening it around his neck. And a muffled groan was heard. The demonic cultivator's face turned red. He had been stabbed, and his limbs were pinned down by a person. His neck was also strangled by the Vajra rope, making it difficult for him to breathe. "Go to hell!" The man with the blade raised his blade and ruthlessly stabbed down again. This time, the blade hit the demonic cultivator's chest. The demonic cultivator groaned, and blood flowed out of his mouth. His body twitched, and his eyes were wide open. In the end, he swallowed his last breath. Only when the demonic cultivator stopped breathing did the few of them release their grip and fall to the ground, panting. Sure enough, one person's strength was small, but many people's strength was great. With everyone's strength, even if they weren't weak, they could still kill a nascent soul cultivator. "Take the things from him and leave quickly," Lei Xiao said in a low voice. As he stood up, he glanced around. The people around him stared at them, but didn't move. Even if they saw that they had obtained a lot of things after killing the nascent soul cultivator, they didn't go forward to snatch it. Most of the others were alone, and only the few of them were in a group. The 2 men who had just joined saw the green-robed youth sitting there foolishly after strangling the demonic cultivator. They immediately pulled him up. "Let's go. If we don't go, the nascent soul demonic cultivator behind us will be here." Thus, Fengjiu was dragged away by them. Perhaps it was because they saw the few of them working together to kill a nascent soul stage devil cultivator. Some of the other people also learned to form teams. The small teams ranged from a few people to a dozen to 20 people. It was also because they formed teams that the death rate of the following battles was reduced. Fengjiu, who was being led to the front, came back to her senses after a long while. She then looked at the people around her. While she was looking at them, they were also looking at her after introducing themselves. "Aren't you a fast runner? Why can't I run in this forest?" One of them asked with a rare smile. Evidently, he had also recalled the scene where Feng Jiu was being chased by the corroding devil tiger. It's not that the ground in this forest is uneven and there are a lot of weeds. "Of course we can't travel at the same speed as on flat ground," Feng Jiu said. He looked at them and asked, "Are you guys traveling in a group? Then I'll go with you, okay?" When they heard this, they glanced at him. Lei Xiao said, "Among all of us, it looks like you're the weakest. You can come with us, but I'll say this first. Don't be a burden." Feng Jiu smiled happily. Her face was simple and honest. No, I won't be a burden." Could she be a burden? What a joke. Chapter 1829. I have experience in the wild forest. Even without a map, I can lead you out of this forest. One of the people said. It was one of the two people who had just joined. When they heard this, they looked at each other and said, "Then let's go. Don't waste time here." In this forest, time was life. If they didn't leave the forest before the agreed time, it would be very difficult for them to survive. "Let's go this way," the man who had just spoken said as he led the way. The others followed behind him. Even though this was a forest, other than the chirping birds on the branches, the people walking in this forest didn't even see a single beast. In addition, Elder Gue didn't give them any fasting pills. While their physical strength was exhausted, their stomachs were also hungry. Gradually, some people's speed slowed down. "I caught a snake. It's barely edible," Su San said as he held a snake that couldn't move in his hand and walked towards the people resting under a tree. They glanced at the snake. Some picked up branches, some skinned the snake, and some lit a fire. They were prepared to roast the snake and eat it. Even if there wasn't much meat, it was better than nothing. However, Feng Jiu glanced at it and said, "Don't bother. This snake can't be eaten." As soon as she said that, everyone turned to look at her. "Why can't it be eaten?" Su San asked. "It's a poisonous snake," Feng Jiu said. "It's fine as long as the gallbladder is taken out. The meat can still be eaten." As Su San spoke, he swiftly dealt with the snake in his hand and peeled off the skin. "I have been traveling for many years and have eaten many poisonous snakes. Even if I have never seen this kind of snake before, what difference does it make?" In his opinion, as long as it was processed, it was fine. Why couldn't it be eaten? This kind of snake's meat is poisonous. If you eat it, you'll be paralyzed or die. Feng Jiu said again. His eyes fell on his hand that was stained with snake blood. He frowned slightly. "Snake blood is also poisonous. Don't you want your hand anymore?" Everyone looked at Feng Jiu's serious face. It didn't seem like he was lying. They couldn't help but look at the skinned snake. Just as Meng San was about to say that he was fine, his hand suddenly went numb, and the snake fell to the ground. He couldn't help but be startled. Seeing this, how could the others not understand? They immediately looked at Feng Jiu and asked, "You know medicine?" He was stained with snake blood. Was there an antidote? What, there is no solution. They had been traveling outside, but they had never encountered such a venomous snake. What kind of place was this? Susan looked at his hands that were quickly turning red and swollen. His heart sank, but he didn't say anything. What else could he say? She had just reminded him, but he didn't take it seriously. Who could he blame now? Feng Jiu glanced at it and asked, "Where did you catch the snake?" "There must be an antidote next to the place where the snake appears. In front," Su San said as he walked towards the place where he had caught the snake. Feng Jiu followed behind him, and the others followed. Walking at the back, they looked at Feng Jiu in surprise. They didn't expect this inconspicuous young man to know medicine. Moreover, he seemed to be very proficient in it. Chapter 1830. Hiss. The sound of a venomous snake hissing could be heard. A brightly colored venomous snake darted out from the bushes and stared at them with its bloodthirsty tongue. When they saw the venomous snake, they were slightly surprised. They looked at Feng Jiu with a glint in their eyes. How did she notice the venomous snake darting out from the bushes when she pulled Paisan back so suddenly? His reaction was even faster than the few of them. "Let's do it. What is the antidote?" Lei Xiao and the rest walked forward. Some of them held swords in their hands, while others held tree branches. With their cultivation level, it was easy for them to deal with a few venomous snakes. The herb with a red line in the middle of the leaves beside the tree can cure the poison. She did not walk forward, but asked them to pick it. The few of them walked forward and cut one of the snakes in half. The rest of the snakes ran away. After checking with the tree branches, they did not find any more venomous snakes. Then they went forward to pick the herb. Pick the leaves and swallow them. Then chew some and boil it on your hands. The venom will be gone in about half an hour. Fengjiu said. Mengsen did as he was told, and the others rested under a tree. After about the time it took for an incense stick to burn, Mengsan's complexion was getting better and the bruises on his hands were fading away. They praised him in their hearts. That seemingly unremarkable herb actually had such a miraculous effect. Can this herb cure other poisons as well? Lin Shi asked. He thought that if it could cure other poisons, he might as well pick more in case of emergencies. Hearing this, Fengjiu could not help but laugh. How is that possible? All poisons have to be treated according to the symptoms. How can there be one herb that can cure all poisons? Furthermore, this is not considered a spiritual herb. It is not very useful. You know medicine. Lei Xiao looked at Fengjiu and said. The youth did not answer her earlier, but this time, it was not a question, but a confirmation. I know a thing or two, she said with a simple and honest smile. Lei Xiao looked around and saw that there was no one around. She lowered her voice and asked, Do you know what the poison in our bodies is? Is there a cure? If the poison in their bodies could be cured, then they would not be controlled by the people from the Temple of Darkness. They could leave as soon as they had the chance. However, the poison in their bodies was a big problem. When the others heard this, their hearts jumped and they looked nervously at Fengjiu. Yes, if the youth had a way to cure the poison in their bodies, however, they shook their heads when they thought of it. How could the youth have a cure? Wasn't he poisoned as well? The poison in their bodies once every half month. If they did not take the antidote, they would die. I don't know. She simply shook her head. The few of them sighed inwardly. They couldn't help but feel a little disappointed, but they also felt that it was natural. How could the poison that Elder Ghost may be something that just anyone could detoxify? How old was the youth? It was normal. Let's go. Cien, we must leave this forest within 3 days. Lei Xiao said, and led the group away again. Chapter 1831. Was it because of those people that she had killed? She thought to herself. She had killed all those people in one move, and they were all nascent soul-stage demonic cultivators. No matter how much they suspected, they would not suspect her. Night fell, and in the dark night, there were occasional screams. No one used the whole night to rest, but after a short rest, they continued to walk. Walking in the dark night, it was easy to get lost if you were not careful. However, the deeper they went, the more dangerous and difficult it was. Fengjiu's team of 7 people gradually joined in as they walked. From 7 people, there were more than 10 people, and then there were more than 30 people. Perhaps because there were more people, there was a trace of vigilance between them. After all, no one knew each other, and no one knew each other's character. However, they formed a team to survive, and they supported each other, but they did not dare to guarantee that they would face danger together, and even more so, they did not dare to guarantee that the people around them would not push them out in the face of danger. Fengjiu could be said to be the most inconspicuous among the group. When everyone was resting, she sat in the corner and ate grass that she had picked from somewhere. Yes, in the eyes of those who did not know, she was so hungry that she could not stand it anymore, and was sitting at the side eating grass. But they did not know that the grass she was eating was a kind of wild herb, which could stimulate saliva and barely fill the stomach. Hey, for you. Paisen took out a green fruit the size of an egg and threw it to Fengjiu. Who knew? It was suddenly intercepted by a hand. That brat ate it for free. It's better to give it to me than to him. A man said, and after receiving the fruit, he was ready to eat it. However, Paisen glared at him, stepped forward, and grabbed the man's hand. Who gave it to you? Give it to me. When he was about to take back the fruit, the man suddenly attacked him. Pai San quickly counterattacked, and the two of them fought back and forth. If this was in the past, no one would care about a single fruit. However, during the few months they were imprisoned in the plaza, other than sparring and training, they could not eat their fill. Not to mention, after they were imprisoned here, their physical strength was greatly depleted, they could not drink water, and they could not eat anything. In their eyes, a single fruit was naturally different. When the people around them saw this, they only glanced at them briefly before their gazes fell on Fengjiu. The dozens of people had different expressions in their eyes. They were surprised that the two of them would actually fight over a fruit. They were even more surprised that the man would give the extremely precious fruit to the youth. After all, the youth could be said to be the weakest among the dozens of people present. Even if he walked through this forest with them, he probably wouldn't survive to the end. Giving him the food was indeed, like that person said, a waste. Fengjiu ate the grass. The sourness in his mouth was very refreshing. Her gaze swept across the crowd without leaving a trace, taking in their expressions one by one. Then, her gaze fell on the two people who were fighting. To be honest, she was also surprised that Pai San would give the fruit to her. There are no wild animals in this forest, and there were no wild fruits either. She did not know where he got the fruit and gave it to her instead of eating it. Chapter 1832. Had they gone crazy from hunger? Perhaps in their eyes, she was also crazy from hunger. Otherwise, how could she eat grass? Thinking of this, she sighed softly in her heart. She threw away the grass in her hand and stared at the two people. In her mind, she was thinking, the sky is about to brighten, and there are only 2 days left. I don't know if they've walked halfway. At this speed, can they really get out of here? A muffled groan was heard. Fengjiu came back to her senses and saw that the golden core cultivator who had snatched the fruit was kicked away by Su San. The fruit in his hand was also taken back by Su San. "Get out of our group," Su San shouted in a deep voice. His gaze was as sharp as a knife. At this moment, his whole body was filled with a bloodthirsty aura. It was as if that person dared to take another step forward, he would dare to kill him. When that person saw this, he endured the pain and stood up while clutching his stomach. He glared at Su San with resentment and glanced at Fengjiu before he turned and left, disappearing into the weeds. "Take it," Su San said with a dark face as he handed the fruit to Fengjiu. Fengjiu looked at him and reached out to take it. "Thank you." Although she had water and food in her space, and this kind of physical work didn't consume much of her energy, she still made herself look very miserable for the whole day in order to not be suspected. Susan walked away with a straight face and said a few words to Lei Xiao and the others. Not long after, everyone was ready to move again. At this moment, 2 nascent soul cultivators suddenly appeared on the tree. They opened the black bags in their hands and sprinkled them down. Hiss! Hiss! Ah, it's a snake! It's a poisonous snake! In an instant, everyone who was sitting around exclaimed and quickly scattered. They only felt the slippery snakes coiling around their bodies. Some of them couldn't dodge in time and were bitten, screaming in pain. In the midst of the chaos, Fengjiu was eating a fruit. Before she could swallow the fruit, she saw a brightly colored poisonous snake flying towards her. She immediately grabbed a branch beside her and swatted it away. Then, she quickly got up and walked towards Lei Xiao and the others. In the process of walking, several poisonous snakes that were thrown towards her were removed by her. At this time, the 2 nascent soul cultivators had already left. Even if she wanted to throw the snakes at them, she couldn't find them. While she was dodging, she caught a glimpse of a poisonous snake slithering from the bottom of her feet. When it was about to bite the nightmare was paying attention to the top and did not pay attention to the bottom of his feet. Seeing this, she used her dodging action to step on the snake's head. With a stomp, he increased his strength. The snake tail swayed a few times before it stopped moving. Lei Xiao and the others shouted in a low voice and quickly left this place. She also left with them, and some people behind her also followed. They quickly walked about 500 meters before stopping. They saw that the original group of dozens of people after being disturbed by the 2 bags of snakes, had less than 20 people left. Moreover, all of them had messy hair, were in a sorry state, and there was still anger on their faces. That's right. Just think about how they were captured here and controlled by others. Even their lives were not in their hands, and from time to time, things like this would happen. It really made them angry, but there was nothing they could do. Chapter 1833. So many people were caught off guard, and half of them were bitten to death by the poisonous snakes that fell from the sky. This kid, who looked the weakest and weakest, how could he still be standing there perfectly fine? Furthermore, he was still eating a half-eaten fruit in one hand. When he heard his words, he raised his head with a dazed expression on his face. How could such a foolish and unintelligent person survive just now? Everyone's gaze fell on the young man in green. A look of surprise flashed across their faces, but they did not say anything. To be able to survive, he must have some ability. Otherwise, he would have died long ago. Lei Zhao's gaze fell on Fengjiu for a while. A look of contemplation and inquiry flashed across his eyes. Others didn't notice it, but he did. When a poisonous snake on the ground was about to bite Nightmare, it was this young man who stepped on the snake's head. When he moved his foot away, the snake's head was already rotten on the ground. To be able to step on the snake's head with such precision in the chaos and save Nightmare 3's life, how could this kid be simple? Crunch! Fengjiu took a bite of the fruit. After looking at the crowd, his gaze fell on the man who was making a fuss about nothing. With some confusion, he said in a muffled voice, "You're still alive too. How could I be dead?" Hearing this, the man choked and widened his eyes. Did he mean that he was more powerful than him? This kid's cultivation was only at the foundation establishment stage. How could he talk to a golden core stage cultivator like him? He really did not know his limits. Pfft, stupid kid. The man sneered but did not say anything else. After all, among those who were caught here, there were also honest people. All right, let's go. The sky is bright. Let's get out of this forest first. As Lei Xiao spoke, he glanced at Fengjiu and said something to the man beside him. The group of people continued to move forward. In this forest, some people had obtained a map, while others had lost their way. They were running around in all directions. The deeper they walked, the more a cloud of smoke gradually filled the forest, obstructing their vision. Help! Is there anyone? Help! As they walked, they vaguely heard a cry for help, and it seemed that there was more than one person. The few people in front stopped and looked at the hazy mist in front of them. It seems to be a formation. It is indeed a formation. Those people should be trapped inside. The fog is rather dense. Even if there's a formation, we can't see clearly. To be able to trap those people, I'm afraid it's no ordinary formation. As Lei Xiao and the others spoke, they discussed whether or not they should save those people. It was at this moment that the trapped person seemed to have noticed the people outside, and his voice rang out once more. We have a map. If you save us, we can look at the map together. If you have a map, you will be able to get out of here. Otherwise, you won't be able to get out. Hearing that voice, everyone couldn't help but look at each other. They have a map. Save him. It is indeed more convenient to have a map of this place. But what if they are lying to us? Another person hesitated. We also need to pass through here. Let's study how to pass through first. Also, which one of you is good at formations? If there's anyone who's good at array formations, let me know. As Lei Xiao spoke, her gaze swept across the crowd. Chapter 1834. I know a little about arrays too, but I don't know how this array is like. I can't guarantee that I can break it. Another man said. Hearing the two say that they only knew a little about arrays, one of the men said, I'm quite proficient in arrays. Maybe I can give it a try. When he said this, his tone was obviously a little smug. Fengjiu looked at them, finished eating the fruit, and stretched out her hand. Her voice was neither loud nor soft as she said, I know a little about arrays too. However, after everyone's gaze swept past him, they automatically ignored Fengjiu. It was obvious that they looked down on him. They felt that even if this young man knew a little about arrays, it was probably just the tip of the iceberg. After all, The few of them who knew about arrays were all golden core cultivators. How much could he, a mere foundation establishment cultivator, know? Since that's the case, the two of you come with me to take a look. The cultivator who said that he was proficient in arrays said to the other two, and took a step forward. Seeing this, Fengjiu put down her hand embarrassedly. All right, if they were ignoring her, so be it. She would continue to be invisible. The three of them went ahead to explore the path while studying what kind of array it was. The rest of them stayed where they were until, after a while, the three of them returned. All of you follow me. This array isn't that big of a deal. It's just a common bewitching array. Although it's been slightly modified, it shouldn't be a big problem. The man who said that he was proficient in arrays said, and gestured for everyone to follow him. Seeing this, the crowd looked at one another before following the three of them into the fog. In the array, the fog became thicker and thicker. Even the people in front couldn't see. Hence, the people in front let the people behind pull on each other's clothes. Fengjiu walked at the back and didn't pull on the clothes of the person in front. The person in front also refused to pull on her clothes. Hence, she followed silently. However, after walking for a while, she was slightly surprised. She raised her eyebrows and stopped in her tracks. She couldn't see clearly, but the sound of footsteps seemed to be right in front of her. And for some reason, the voices of the people who were crying for help disappeared in here. Interesting. She curled the corners of her lips and revealed a smile. She released her divine sense at this moment and noticed that there were no flying immortals or nascent soul cultivators watching her. Only then did she slow down her pace and casually walk through the array. As for the people in front, after walking for a while, they felt that something was wrong. They couldn't help but stop. This isn't right. Why does it seem like it's going in circles? Where's the person who called for help? Why is there no sound? Lei Xiao asked from the front, but no one could answer. At this moment, the man who said he was proficient in formations had sweat dripping down his forehead. He muttered, "How could this be? How could this be? This array formation seemed to be able to change. It wasn't like this when I came in." Hearing this, how could the crowd not know that they were also trapped? For a moment, they all fell silent. At this moment, Su San shouted, "Kid? Brat? Are you there?" Not hearing anything for a long time, he knew something was wrong and asked, "Where's that young man? Who saw him?" Pai San counted the number of people until he reached the last person and asked, "Where is the young man behind you? Wasn't he pulling on your clothes? Why didn't you say anything when he went missing?" Chapter 1835. Perhaps it was because the green-robed youth had saved him before, but along the way, he paid more attention to him than the others. Naturally, he also hoped that the youth could walk out of here alive. Now that more than 10 people were walking together, but the youth was lost, his face immediately darkened. Without saying a word, Payson strode back. In his opinion, if the young man in green had not come with them, he would have died soon. He had saved his life, so he could not leave him alone. "Ming San, where are you going?" Lei Xiao and the others walked over. "I'm going back to find that kid," Ming San said. "Let's go with you. Otherwise, it'll be difficult to walk alone." Lei Xiao said, "Yes, let's go together. He should be behind us. Maybe he's walking slowly, but he should be fine." "Lin," she said. Seeing the few of them walking back, one of the people behind them called out, "You don't have to go back. Even if you go back the way you came, you won't be able to get out. The array here is constantly changing. If you're not careful, you won't be able to walk back." "Aren't we trapped now? What's the difference?" They didn't even turn their heads as they continued to walk forward. Seeing the few of them leave, the remaining 10 people stood there in silence. One of them asked, "Why are they so nice to that kid? It's not a big deal if he's lost." Earlier, Mingson was poisoned by a snake. It was that kid who saved him. Another person said while shaking his head, "It's too late to go back now." At this time, Fengjiu, who did not know that Ming San and the others had turned back to look for her, was squatting on the ground and drawing circles with a branch. Well, it looked like circles, but it was actually an array. She was analyzing the changes in the array and the locations of the life and death gates. Due to the wonders of this array, When the array changed, the people trapped in it would not be able to call for help. Therefore, after squatting here for a while, she could faintly hear a few cries for help. It was from the people from before. The array changes in half an instance's time. Then, if we're here, it should be like this. If we want to get out of here, we should go in from here. She murmured softly as she drew circles on the ground with a branch. Kid, where are you? Suddenly, Su-san's voice was heard. Feng-jiu was slightly surprised and looked up. There was a vast expanse of white in front of her, and she couldn't see anyone. She couldn't tell the direction of the voice either. However, she had already circled around and could easily reach them. Thus, he stood up and wiped away the formation on the ground with his foot. Only then did he walk forward. However, he had only walked a short distance when he heard a muffled groan and smelled the scent of blood. She frowned slightly and released her divine sense. She saw a nascent soul realm cultivator attacking the people trapped in the formation. Meng San and the others were also rushing towards the center of the formation. Seeing this, she quickened her pace and walked forward. Perhaps if a few golden core stage cultivators joined forces outside, they would have a slim chance of survival. But in here, they would only be killed. Chapter 1836. In an instant, the aura of death enveloped him. The pressure of a nascent soul cultivator was so terrifying that it made him break out in cold sweat. He desperately told himself to get out of the way, but his entire body was frozen. It was as if he had been frozen in 1,000-year-old ice. He was frozen as he stared at the sharp sword piercing toward his forehead. Meng San. When Lei Xiao saw this, he was still a distance away. Just as he thought Meng San would be killed, he heard Meng San groan. His originally stiff body suddenly bent down, and he fell to the ground. And Su-san let out a muffled groan and fell to the ground. Before he could recover, Lei Xiao, who was behind him, rushed forward and dragged him to the other side. The few of them did not dare to hesitate and quickly gathered together to resist the pressure of a nascent soul cultivator. However, for some reason, this nascent soul cultivator was determined to kill them. The pressure he released was extremely strong. Even if they wanted to resist, they couldn't withstand the pressure. Pooh! They spat out a mouthful of blood and felt the blood in their bodies become chaotic. Under the pressure, they fell to the ground and couldn't stand up. In front of a nascent soul cultivator who was a level higher than them, the pressure he released was like Mount Tai. It was difficult to even breathe. The nascent soul cultivators who fought them before didn't release such a strong pressure. Just the pressure alone was enough to let them know that he wanted them dead. Mere golden core cultivators want to live from my hands? There are hundreds of you. Even if you die, it'll be the same for you. Die. The nascent soul cultivator's cold and ruthless voice sounded. His sharp sword contained sword chi as it attacked Meng San and the others. Just as they were prepared to die, they suddenly saw a figure rush out. It was like a ghost, so fast that they couldn't see it clearly. They only knew that in the fog, the figure rushed out with lightning speed and grabbed the nascent soul cultivator attacking them. Who is it? The nascent soul cultivator's gloomy voice sounded. But after that, there was no more movement. They sat on the ground in shock and couldn't recover for a while. Who was it? Who saved them? With such skills and speed, he was definitely a strong person who was above the fairy realm. If there was really a strong person who had managed to sneak in, would they be saved? Why are you all sitting on the ground? Feng-jiu walked out of the fog and looked at the people who were sitting on the ground in a daze with a surprised expression. She looked around and asked, "Why are there only a few of you? Did you guys get separated too?" It took them a while to regain their senses. They stood up and looked around. Gone. That dangerous aura was gone. It seemed that the nascent soul cultivator had been killed. But who was the one who saved them? At this moment, no one thought that it was Feng-jiu who had appeared in front of them. After all, how could a Foundation establishment youth do such a thing? They didn't even suspect that it was him, so they ruled him out. "We're here for you. Are you all right?" Chapter 1837. To be able to hit his legs and save his life in this fog. How high was that person's cultivation level? And wasn't this the territory of the Temple of Darkness? How could someone else have snuck in? I'm fine. I was just walking when I realized that you were all gone. I walked around and heard some noise, so I came over. Feng said as he smelled the scent in the air and walked forward about 2 or 3 meters. Come over quickly. There are corpses here. Hearing this, they immediately rushed forward. When they arrived at Feng side, they found several people lying on the ground. The corpses hadn't hardened yet. They were probably killed by the nascent soul cultivator earlier. There's something here. Feng took out something from one of the people's arms and unfolded it. He couldn't help but smile. It's a map. Let me see. Lei Xiao stepped forward and took a look. He couldn't help but be delighted. It really is a map. Through the fog, he looked at the map. After a while, he pointed out. We're here now. We've walked half the distance. It seems that we're heading in the right direction. We're heading in the right direction. However, the most troublesome thing now is how to get out of this formation. Don't worry about that. Just follow me. Feng smiled and said to the others, Let's go. You won't get lost if you follow me. Hearing this, the others looked at each other. They didn't say anything and followed beside him. However, they didn't have much hope in their hearts. Unexpectedly, after walking for a while, they met the previous dozen or so people. You come back again? A man was slightly surprised when he saw them. After all, it wasn't easy to walk in this formation. However, when he saw the young man in green, his eyes widened. It's you again? This young man lost it and actually found it again? This kid's luck was too good, wasn't it? It's me. Feng smiled and narrowed his eyes. Do you want to come with us? The others had no choice but to follow them. Even if they couldn't get out, at least they wouldn't be separated. However, what they didn't expect was that in less than an hour, they actually walked out of the formation. Out? It can't be. One of the men looked behind him in disbelief, then looked at Feng. For a moment, his gaze became complicated. Like I said, I also know about formations. Feng smiled and squinted his eyes. He looked like a simple and honest person, but when they heard his words and looked at him, they were so angry that they wanted to beat him up. But thinking about it, he had clearly said it before. It was them who didn't believe him and consciously ignored him. How could they blame him now? In the end, they could only swallow their anger. Let's go. There's a water source up ahead. Lei Xiao pointed to the left. When the others heard this, they couldn't help but ask, How do you know? Everyone's gazes swept over him until they saw him take out a map. Their eyes narrowed involuntarily. Map? He actually got a map? They recalled that the people who had been crying for help in the formation seemed to have shouted that they had a map. Chapter 1838. Seeing this, Lei Xiao and the others stared at them with vigilance and took defensive stances. What do you want? Lei Xiao asked in a deep voice. At this moment, a few men walked out from the group. They glanced at Lei Xiao and the others and waved their hands to signal the others to pay attention to their surroundings. One of them said in a deep voice, You don't have to worry. We don't want to do anything to you. However, since you can come here, it can be seen that you're not ordinary people. There is something we want to cooperate with you. Hearing this, Lei Xiao and the others exchanged glances. Feng, who was standing with Lei Xiao and the others, also glanced at those people. A trace of thought flashed through her eyes. Cooperate with what? Don't forget, we're just praying their hands. We don't even know if we can leave this forest alive. Su San snorted and stared at them with an unfriendly expression. Although these people were not bloodthirsty and cruel, they had been in here for a few months. They were all like ferocious beasts, and it was hard to trust them. That's why we should cooperate, a fair-skinned man said and looked at the crowd. Are you really willing to give your lives to the people of the Temple of Darkness? Can't you even control your own life? Everyone was silent. Of course they were not willing, but what could they do now? Feng lips curled up slightly, and a trace of interest flashed through his eyes. Interesting. What did these people want to do? Were they planning to revolt? They shouldn't be so stupid, right? With their strength, they couldn't escape. Moreover, the ghost elder wasn't easy to fool. It would be very difficult for them to escape. Moreover, the poison in each of them couldn't be cured by ordinary people. What do you mean by cooperating? Lei Xiao asked in a deep voice while paying attention to them and guessing their intentions. The fair-skinned man exchanged glances with the people beside him before he said, "There's a piece of news that you probably don't know. Those who leave this place alive will be kept behind to be nurtured. And this nurturing isn't just simple nurturing, it's nurturing with medicinal pills to rapidly increase their strength and combat strength." The fair-skinned man paused for a moment before continuing. "Furthermore, other than some of the spies that will be sent to the 4 great sects, the rest will be nurtured as elites. In other words, as long as we pass this test, as long as we can withstand the subsequent tests, we will not only become stronger with the help of the pills, but also have a chance to survive. And what we want to cooperate with you is to help each other and minimize the deaths of our brothers as much as possible. When our strength increases, we'll join forces and escape from here. As for the poison in our bodies, I've heard from a friend that there's a ghost doctor who can bring the dead back to life and is proficient in medicine and poisons. When the time comes, we can find this person and ask him to cure us." Hearing this, Fengjiu couldn't help but be slightly surprised. She sized up this fair-skinned man. This person actually knew about the ghost doctor? Furthermore, where did he get all this information from? Where did you get this information from? Paisan asked the question she wanted to ask. Chapter 1839. When everyone saw the unnatural expression on his face, they all found it strange. If you have something to say, just say it. What's so awkward about a man? Moreover, they were all men here too. How did you get this information? Lei Xiao also asked, staring at the fair man. If you have something to say, just say it. Don't be shy. Who's being shy? The fair man glanced at him unhappily, coughed lightly, and said, "I got this information from Elder Ghost Woman." Hearing this, everyone was startled. That woman? What do you mean? Even if she knew, why would she tell you this information? The fair man's face flushed slightly, as if he was holding his breath, but he couldn't say anything for a long time. Seeing this, Fengjiu couldn't help but blink. Her mind moved as she stared at the fair man, and her voice had a trace of surprise. "You asterisk asterisker? Who asterisk that woman?" The fair man said hurriedly. Seeing that everyone was staring at him, he coughed lightly. "That woman wanted to asterisk me, so I beat her at her own game. I got a lot of information from her, and this information is definitely true." Hearing this, the crowd nodded in understanding. If that was the case, then it made sense, especially since this man was fair and clean, and his appearance wasn't bad. No matter how one looked at him, he looked like a pretty boy, and he was indeed much better than Elder Ghost. However, you mentioned the ghost doctor earlier? Is this person's medical skills really that good? Lei Xiao asked again. Yes, according to my friend, there's no poison in this world that the ghost doctor can't cure. The fair man said with certainty, clearly believing in his friend. Fengjiu touched her face, and it was a little hot. She was standing here, but these people didn't know and praised her in front of her. Yes, she was a little embarrassed. Hearing this, everyone gathered together to discuss, and finally decided to take a gamble. Thus, after a simple introduction, the 50 to 60 people continued to walk forward according to the map. Along the way, Fengjiu found that the people in the original group of 30 people seemed to have been reorganized, and no one had any bad intentions. It was the same for the dozen people on their side. Even if they encountered danger along the way, they passed through safely. In addition, among these people, there were people who were good at various fields, and they were also very determined. They were a group of good seedlings. The water source is in front. Let's all rest up there. The fair man, Hao Juanhao, said, pointing at a place not far ahead. You have a map too? Lei Xiao glanced at them and asked. There's one. They nodded and glanced at Lei Xiao. The other one is with you, right? At that time, they had seen the maps that they had taken out. They did not expect that both maps would fall into their hands. That's right, Lei Xiao responded and didn't say anything else. When they reached the water source, everyone sat down to rest. After a while, a few of them looked around vigilantly. Susan and Hisheng looked at each other, then got up and walked around. Fengjiu saw this and walked beside them. When they came to a place a little further ahead, they saw that there were people who were one step ahead of them. Chapter 1840. They had a map in hand and had come here in a group. However, this person was alone and had arrived at the water source one step ahead of them. From this, it could be seen that this person was not ordinary. That person noticed their presence and glanced at them, but it was only a glance before he shifted his gaze away, no longer paying attention to them. Instead, he took out a bamboo tube cut from somewhere and filled it with water, preparing to continue on his journey. Seeing this, Susan and Hisheng both called out to him, "Brother, wait a moment." The two of them chased after him. Fengjiu, on the other hand, was sizing up the man without leaving a trace. She couldn't hide the admiration in her eyes. This man was quite capable. He looked to be in his 30s, and his clothes were stained with blood. He held a blade in his hand at all times. It could be seen that he had killed many people along the way. Most of the people that Elder Go sent here were nascent soul cultivators. This person was able to defeat a nascent soul cultivator by himself, which was already an extraordinary feat. "What are you doing?" The person narrowed his eyes and turned around. His killing intent was terrifying. Seeing this, Fengjiu couldn't help but smile. This person's aura was not inferior to the 8 Phoenix guards by her side at all. His killing intent was naturally revealed. He hadn't even made a move yet, but he was already able to intimidate the other party. She didn't think that there would be hidden dragons and crouching tigers among the captured people. "We'll form a group of a few dozen people. Brother, do you want to come with us? That way, we'll be able to look after each other." Susan invited. This kind of person was definitely worth recruiting. "No need." The man directly refused and walked away. In a short while, he disappeared in front of their eyes. I recognize this person. He's the man who killed a nascent soul cultivator. Last time, he caused quite a commotion. This person is very promising. I didn't think that not only would his battle prowess be good, his sense of direction would also be good. He's not simple to be able to get here without a map. Susan withdrew his gaze and spoke with an unconcealable tone of regret. They felt that it was a pity that they couldn't recruit such a person into their team. Fengjiu, on the other hand, didn't say anything. He just listened and watched quietly. Then, he walked back with them and found a place to sit down. He listened to Ming San and Ming San tell everyone about their encounter with the man just now. "All right, let's go after the rest. It won't be too late to rest after we leave the forest." As Lei Xiao spoke, she stood up and let everyone set off again. The group quickened their pace and moved forward. On the morning of the 3rd day, just as they were about to pass through the forest, Fengjiu, who had been invisible all this time, suddenly stood out. "I think we can split up here." His sudden words startled everyone. "What do you mean?" Paisen asked. 50 to 60 people's gazes fell on Fengjiu. Obviously, they didn't know what he meant. Or rather, no one thought too deeply about it. They didn't guess what those people were thinking when they saw them appear together. Fengjiu glanced at them and said in a voice that wasn't too loud or soft, "I think they captured us and want to train us to be spies. They definitely don't want us to be too involved with each other. It's not easy for them to control us, and it's easy for something to happen." Chapter 1841. From this moment onwards, even if we see each other, we'll pretend not to know each other. Lei Xiao immediately said to the group, "Even if they find out that we've formed a team, it doesn't matter. However, once we reach this place, we'll split up and act like before." "Okay," the group replied. They knew that this was the best way to go. Thus, they formed a team. Some of them walked first, while others walked slowly. They split up and walked separately. Fengjiu naturally walked with Lei Xiao and the others. Hao Juanhao also walked with them. They only walked out of the forest at noon. However, before they left, the man they had met before was already sitting there and waiting for them. Beside him was the Ghost Elder, as well as a few Fairy Realm cultivators and a few Nascent Soul Realm cultivators. When they saw them walk out, those people glanced at them and sized them up. When the ghost elder saw that the green-robed youth had actually managed to walk out alive, he couldn't help but look at him in surprise. He secretly sized him up. He saw that the youth's face was pale, his robes were torn, and his hair was messy. Compared to when he had first seen him, he was no longer clean and handsome. After glancing at him, the ghost elder moved his gaze away and continued to wait with narrowed eyes. The group also sat down in a corner and didn't say anything to each other. A few more people arrived one after another. They were all the people they had formed a team with before. When they arrived, they all sat down with exhausted expressions and gasped for breath. Only when the sun had set did the spectral elder open his eyes. After glancing at the remaining people, he merely said, "Bring them all back." Afterwards, he left on his sword Qi. Fengjiu and the others were brought back by a few fairy realm cultivators using flying devices. When they returned to the plaza, the group stood in a circle. They didn't know what would happen next. At this moment, they were still somewhat nervous. "Eat." One of the fairy realm cultivators waved his sleeve. Pills flew in front of the group and landed in their outstretched hands. Fengjiu picked up a pill and smelled it. Seeing that it was a fasting pill, he swallowed it. In this place, there was no need to count on meat. Just having fasting pills was already good enough. After everyone swallowed the pills, they felt that the hunger in their stomachs had finally disappeared. There was also a sense of satiation. They couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief. Only the heavens knew how much strength they had consumed in these 3 short days. "Take these people away. We'll gather at dawn tomorrow," the celestial ascendant ordered. A few nascent soul cultivators then took the 70 to 80 people away. Yes, of the 378 people, only a dozen or so came out in the last 3 days, except for the 50 to 60 people in Fengjiu's team. Therefore, the total number of people who passed was only 70 to 80. They were brought to 3 large bunk rooms. Each bunk room could sleep about 30 people. After entering the room, they were given a set of black, tight-fitting clothes. "In the future, all of you will live here. Turn left at the exit and you'll find a place to bathe. Change your clothes and gather here tomorrow." After giving his instructions, the nascent soul cultivator turned around and left. Chapter 1842. This was a man. This was a man. At this moment, she really wanted to know how these people would react when they found out that she was a girl. She caught a glimpse of a man mumbling that his clothes were stained with something. After taking off his clothes, he even wanted to take off his remaining underwear. Seeing this, she hurriedly called out to stop him. "Uncle over there, wait, wait," Fengjiu shouted. Once she said this, the 20 people in the room all looked at her. The bearded man who was taking off his underwear heard this and turned to look at Fengjiu. "You're calling me?" He pointed at himself. "Yes, I'm calling you." Just as she replied, the bearded man glared at her and said with dissatisfaction, "I just haven't trimmed my beard for a few months. How can I be worthy of being called an uncle? I'm only 23 years old this year." Hearing this, Fengjiu's mouth twitched. "All right, big brother, don't take off your underwear. Take it off when you shower." Hearing this, some of the people only laughed. Some of them were busy with their own things, thinking that this youth must have never been in a common bed before. He didn't know that they were all men who were more casual and didn't pay much attention to details. "What does it matter if we're all men?" The bearded man said disapprovingly. "What I have, you have too. Why are you embarrassed?" As he said this, he wanted to take off his underwear. Just as Fengjiu was about to speak, she saw the man swiftly take off his pants. Seeing this, she sighed softly and glanced at the bearded man before silently averting her eyes. It wasn't that she was embarrassed to look, but she felt that this person definitely wouldn't have the face to appear in front of her in the future. The shared room could accommodate 30 people, but there were only 25 people here. Fengjiu also chose a seat in the corner, so she didn't notice who was sitting next to her. When she came back from her shower, she couldn't help but be surprised when she saw the person sitting there. It was Su-san. Seeing Fengjiu enter, the others' gazes also fell on him, sizing him up. They saw that the originally green-robed youth had changed into a black robe. Although his appearance was not particularly outstanding, there was still something different about him. After putting on the black clothes, the youth's originally thin and weak body no longer looked as thin and small as before. Of course, compared to these robust men, it was incomparable. However, she was still valiant and very dazzling. This is the waist tag that those people sent over just now. There is a number written on it. It is our code name when we are being trained here. Paisen passed the tag to her. Feng Jiu took a look and couldn't help but smile. 9. What a coincidence. Yes, after Lei Xiao and I took one, we also took one for you. The one in the corner over there is number 1. Pei-san signaled Feng Jiu to look over. The person sitting cross-legged on the other side of the bunk was the man they met in the forest. Go to sleep. What's there to talk about? A shout came from outside. Everyone inside stopped talking and went back to their beds to rest. Chapter 1843. Feng Jiu glanced at the snake pit in front of him, then at the 70 to 80 men who had been brought over. Some of them had pale faces and large beads of cold sweat on their foreheads. Some had dark expressions and pursed their lips as they stared at the snake pit in front of them with tense bodies. Moving his gaze away from those people, Feng Jiu's gaze landed on the fairies and nascent soul cultivators at the side. He slowly lowered his gaze. Was he trying to push those people into the snake pit? Those people were all captured from the outside. They weren't unforgivably evil people. From the fact that they were able to survive in the forest, it could be seen that they had some ability. However, if these people were to be killed just like that, it would be a bit too much. As the thought flashed through her mind, she sighed in her heart. How could the people from the Temple of Darkness have any humanity? Perhaps human lives were no more than ants to them. Not only would killing these people shock them, but it would also show their ruthlessness and bloodthirstiness. After this scene, even those who were disloyal would have to consider whether or not they had the ability to completely escape from their hands. Otherwise, if they fell into their hands, it would be a fate worse than death. Everyone was silent. The spectral elder walked over from behind. The seductive woman was no longer by his side. This was because the woman had already been killed by him when she tried to seduce Hao Junhao in the forest. The spectral elder walked to the front. His cold, viper-like gaze swept past the people in tight robes. When it landed on Feng Jiu, it was unknown whether it was intentional or not, but it lingered for a while before moving away. He looked at the men with tense bodies and his cold, unhurried voice rang out. I said before that those who can't pass the test will die. Moreover, they will die very miserably. With that, he waved his hand, and the two nascent soul cultivators escorted two pale-faced men forward. No. The two men's legs went soft, and their pants were wet from extreme fear. Their faces turned pale as they looked at the snake pit. There were many kinds of death. However, this kind of death was the most difficult to accept. They weren't afraid of death. However, they were afraid of this kind of pain and death that came from the heart. Push them away. Elder Ghost's voice was filled with viciousness, as if he didn't treat the two of them as humans. No, don't, help. The two of them were pushed into the snake pit by the nascent soul cultivator. As soon as they fell into the snake pit, the poisonous snakes coiled around them tightly. Not long after, Jian Jing's shrill screams weakened. The two of them were motionless, their faces turning black and purple. Their bodies were covered with bite marks from the poisonous snakes. Feng Jiu's gaze moved slightly and landed on Senior Gue. He secretly suppressed the urge to kill. Elder Gue did not notice Feng Jiu's gaze. Instead, he looked at the people who were standing. He looked at them and said, "Becoming the food of a poisonous snake, enduring everything before death. I believe that you will not like that feeling." The ghost elder laughed sinisterly. He stared at the 70 to 80 people and said, "Kneel down and save me. Perhaps I can let you go and give you a chance to live." As soon as he said this, more than 30 of the 70 to 80 people fell to their knees and kowtowed to him. Chapter 1844. Pleas for mercy rang out in the plaza. However, Elder Gue's gaze didn't even look at them. Instead, it landed on the 40 or so men who were still standing ramrod straight. He asked with interest, "You guys aren't afraid of death?" One of the men snorted. "Even if we're afraid of death, we won't beg for mercy. If you want to kill us, then do as you please. Isn't it just death? What's the big deal?" Another man also spoke. There wasn't a trace of fear in his eyes. Another man with a stocky build also spoke loudly. "We already knew that we would die when we came out, but we didn't think that we would die to these little snakes." How depressing. Fengjiu looked at these people and then looked at Elder Gue. His heart moved. It seemed like these people really did have a chance of survival. Sure enough, the spectral elder walked forward and swept his gaze over them. In the end, he nodded and said, "Not bad. Your courage isn't bad. Since you become a member of our Dark Knight Temple, you can't be a coward." When these people heard this, they all frowned and stared at him as if they didn't understand. Elder Ghost stared at them and revealed a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Although you guys are a bit weaker than those people, I've taken a liking to your backbone. I'll spare your lives. I believe that even if you guys aren't nurtured as elites, you'll still be useful in the future." After saying this, he looked at the two nascent soul cultivators on the side. "Take them down and send them to Elder Sunday. Have him arrange their training." "Yes." The two nascent soul cultivators responded and shouted at the 40 or so people, "Come over here." After those people left, Elder Gue glanced at the 30 or so people kneeling on the ground. His face was filled with disgust. Push away all of them on the ground in fear of the snakes. He looked down on people without courage. I'll fight it out with you." The people kneeling on the ground had no other choice. They could only get up and throw themselves at Elder Ghost with all their might. They thought that even if they died, they would drag someone down with them. From a moment, the first person leaped up, the others also leaped up and threw themselves at Elder Ghost, and the others like they couldn't cover their ears. Elder Ghost's eyes narrowed as a bloodthirsty, killing intent flashed through his eyes. Just as he was about to make a move, a black figure instantly shot out and kicked away the person that pounced at him before blocking in front of him. A trace of surprise flashed through his eyes as he stared at the back of the black-clothed youth. His eyes flashed, but he didn't say anything. "Kill them." Fengjiu's voice rang out, causing the people dressed in martial attire to recover from their shock. Seeing those people rushing forward, they also quickly rushed out. Crack! Yes! Muffled groans and the sound of bones breaking rang out in the square. Low shouts and miserable cries rang out, making it seem rather chaotic. The smell of blood spread through the air. Not long after, the entire square quieted down, and there were 30 or so corpses on the ground. After the people dressed in martial attire dealt with those people, they all lined up according to their numbers. Although they didn't show anything on their faces, every single one of them was slightly shaken in their hearts. At this moment, the ascendants on the side finally returned to their senses. They glanced at the corpses on the ground, then glanced at the people lined up in groups, and their eyes flickered slightly. Chapter 1845. Why did you kill them? The spectral elder's voice was very soft, as if he was afraid of scaring him. There was also a trace of curiosity in his voice, as if he really wanted to know why he did that. Fengjiu's body trembled slightly at this moment. He raised his head and looked at the spectral elder, because we're already part of the Temple of Darkness. Naturally, we couldn't just watch them attack you. At that moment, I didn't think of anything else. I just charged forward in a daze. His voice grew softer and softer. However, when the spectral elder heard his words, he revealed a satisfied expression. Very good. It's good that you have such self-awareness. The spectral elder looked at them and said, "From a moment you put on the robes given to you by the Temple of Darkness, you're part of the Temple of Darkness. I don't want wood, and I don't want wooden puppets that only follow orders. I want people who can change flexibly. Only this way, when you go out on missions in the future, you can better complete the orders given by the higher-ups." "You're number 9? The spectral elder glanced at the badge on Fengjiu's waist. Yes, Fengjiu replied and lowered his head. He was so respectful that no one could find fault with him. Although your strength is the weakest among these people, you're quite smart. I find you pleasing to the eye. How about this? The spectral elder's voice paused, and he glanced at everyone. I originally wanted to choose a captain from among you today, but seeing how things have turned out, I'll choose you. Me? Fengjiu stuttered and asked in astonishment. No, it'll be you. The spectral elder nodded in a good mood. Clearly, the scene of Fengjiu charging forward earlier had greatly pleased him. But I'm the weakest, she said softly. If you're weak, then think of a way to get up. There will be tests and training every once in a while. If you're still this weak at that time, then I'll kill you first before anyone else does anything. The spectral elder's eyes narrowed as a trace of viciousness appeared on his face. Yes, Fengjiu replied, but he didn't feel any pressure in his heart. Was she weak? Come a try. If she wanted to make a move, no one here was her match. Lei Xiao, Su San, and the others narrowed their eyes. They were thinking that if number 9 hadn't killed those people would have suffered the pain of being bitten by the poisonous snakes. They had helped them by killing them. However, was number 9 really like what he said, or was he just like what they thought? They suppressed the thoughts in their hearts and followed one of the fairy realm cultivators through an underground secret tunnel. They arrived at the dungeon. As soon as they entered, the aura of death rushed towards them, causing their originally relaxed hearts to be on edge once again. The people locked up here are all people who are going to be executed. Today is the first day, so your mission is to kill those people inside, the fairy realm cultivator said coldly. He opened the last stone door and let them in. No one asked because they all knew that the people inside were not simple. Otherwise, they would not have allowed so many people to enter at once. The only thing they could be sure of was that no matter how many people there were, their strength was definitely above theirs. Then don't we have weapons? One of them couldn't help but ask. Chapter 1846. Hearing this, everyone could only walk forward. After they entered, the stone door behind them closed with a rumble. The originally clear line of sight also became dim at this moment, with only a few faint rays of light coming from the illumination on the wall. Fengjiu and Swan were walking in front. However, suddenly, someone squeezed in from behind and knocked her to the side with force. At the same time, it was accompanied by a low curse. Lackey, get lost. Don't block my way. A man scolded and glanced disdainfully at Fengjiu. He strode forward, but at this moment his shoulder was grabbed by someone behind him. How can you say that? Paisen grabbed the man's shoulder and glared at him. Who are you calling a lackey? I'm talking about this kid. What's wrong? Isn't he a lackey? The man also turned around. This place was sealed, without the people from the Temple of Darkness watching. He could be bold and directly pointed at Fengjiu's nose and scolded. Fengjiu looked at the finger pointing at her, and her eyes flashed. She had the urge to break that finger. However, in the dim light, she only licked the corner of her mouth and suppressed that urge. She silently moved her eyes away and paid attention to the movements inside. Watch your words. Paisen glared at the man. Perhaps he felt that Fengjiu was young and had saved him before, so he wanted to protect him. Naturally, he would not allow him to be bullied. How did I say that? Tell me, am I wrong? Didn't this kid deliberately rush forward to save Elder Ghost to curry favor with those people? Was he if not a lackey? The man said disdainfully, his eyes still staring at Fengjiu. He felt that he was guilty and did not dare to talk back to him. Lei Xiao frowned and said, Stop arguing. We're here on a mission. We don't know what dangers lie ahead. How can we quarrel here? Lei Xiao glanced at the man and said, Besides, I don't think there was anything wrong with number 9 stepping forward. If he hadn't rushed forward, those people would have died even more miserably. Hearing this, the others fell silent. Evidently, they had already thought of this point. Thus, they didn't say much about number 9's actions at that time. However, they were still a little surprised by his sharp senses and reaction. Even more so, they didn't think that he would help those people at that moment, killing them and giving them a quick death. TSK. Who knew what he was thinking at that time? Didn't he say it himself? What did he mean by treating him as a member of the Temple of Darkness? He's just a lackey. It was obvious that the man looked down on Fengjiu, and he was angry that Fengjiu was appointed as their captain. So he insulted him and called him a henchman. Let's go. Let's go ahead and take a look. Fengjiu glanced at the man and ignored him. Instead, he pulled Pei San forward. Lei Xiao didn't say anything when she saw this. She walked past the man and followed Fengjiu forward. The people behind them naturally followed. At the very back, the man who shared a bunk with Fengjiu's group also glanced at the man who insulted Fengjiu when he passed by him before walking forward. Seeing that everyone was standing on the kid's side, the man was a little dissatisfied and resentful. He gritted his teeth and cursed under his breath before quickly following. Chapter 1847. When Fengjiu and the rest arrived inside, they realized that the dungeon was as big as the plaza above. Furthermore, they did not see a single person along the way. It was clearly said that there were demonic cultivators who had committed crimes and were waiting to die, but now they did not see a single person. Everyone could not help but become vigilant. When they walked, they also walked in groups of two, with their backs facing each other as they paid attention to their surroundings. Suddenly, a fierce shout was heard, and a figure in tattered clothes rushed out. In the next moment, dozens of figures in tattered clothes rushed out once again and fiercely pounced on Fengjiu and the rest. Their speed and aura were like fierce beasts that had been starved for a long time, causing everyone to tremble in fear. Although neither side had any weapons in their hands, at this moment, murderous intent rose, and a cold aura caused the entire dungeon to become even more sinister. Low shouts, the sound of fists colliding, and the sound of palms slashing through the air rang out in the dungeon. Lei Xiao reached out and twisted, breaking the head of a demonic cultivator. A cracking sound was heard, followed by a shrill scream, mixed in with the chaos. Crack! Kill you all. Go to hell. In the chaotic sounds of battle, the fallen corpses were stepped on, and some were tripped by the corpses. When they fell to the ground, another person pounced on them and waved his fist, attacking the fatal points of the other party's body. The sound of a chest shattering was heard, and the person who was hit in the sternum spat out blood. His body trembled, and in the end, his eyes were filled with unwillingness as he breathed his last. Hiss! A man in black took a deep breath. The clothes on his arm were torn, and there were a few bloody scratches on his arm. The wound looked as if he had been scratched by a wild beast, and it was a ghastly sight. Hiss! It hurt so much. The man who was scratched was the bearded man, the man who had taken off his underpants last night. He did not care about the wound on his arm, and waved his fist, which contained the aura of spiritual power, and landed on the other party's head with a bang. Bang! The heavy blow caused the man's head to tilt, and he spat out a mouthful of blood and fell to the ground. The bearded man turned around and attacked another person. At this moment, while he was dealing with the person in front of him, the person behind him held a sharpened white bone and fiercely stabbed it at the back of the bearded man's head. When Fengjiu kicked a demonic cultivator away, he happened to catch a glimpse of this scene. Seeing that the bearded man's life on the line, he immediately moved his palm and a silver needle. The demonic cultivator with the sharp white bone in his hand screamed and grabbed his trembling wrist. Just as he was about to attack again, another demonic cultivator threw him and sent him flying. The sharp white bone in his hand pierced his heart. This was because the thin and weak youth had turned around and attacked, and sent a golden core cultivator flying. Furthermore, he had killed him with a single palm strike. He was dumbfounded by her nimble movements and beautiful movements. Wasn't this kid in the Foundation establishment stage? How? How could he send a golden core cultivator flying with a single palm strike? Chapter 1848. He quickly calmed himself down and attacked the demonic cultivators. With danger approaching, He could not care less about the kid. Beside Fengjiu, Pai San was also secretly shocked when he saw Fengjiu's skills. How was this the strength of a foundation establishment cultivator? Could it be that he was hiding his strength? But if he was hiding his strength, why didn't Elder Ghost and the others notice? Although he was shocked, he did not show it on his face, nor did he ask any questions. Everyone had secrets. He did not say anything because he did not want them to know. However, he had been hiding his strength before. Why did he reveal his skills here? Was he not afraid that they would find out? Not only did Pai San, the bearded man, notice it, but Lei Xiao and the others also noticed it. They originally wanted to pay more attention to number 9 and help him if he was in danger. They did not expect to see him attack so fiercely. They were all people who had been outside before. Naturally, they could tell at a glance that number 9's skills were steady and steady. Moreover, his attacks were fatal. He was definitely not simple. Number 1's gaze also swept past Fengjiu. Just as he was about to look away, he saw the man who had called Fengjiu a lackey use a sneak attack while attacking the demonic cultivator, fiercely knocking the youth who was fighting the demonic cultivator away. Seeing this, he frowned. In a flash, he stepped forward and kicked the man who had used a sneak attack. Bang! Ah! The man groaned and spat out a mouthful of blood as he crashed to the ground. He supported himself against the wall and stood up. His eyes were filled with hatred as he glared at number 1 who had attacked him. At this moment, Fengjiu sent the demonic cultivator flying with his palm as he was knocked away. At the same time, he spun around and landed steadily on the ground. When he turned around, he saw that the man who had knocked into him was kicked away by number 1. Seeing this, she glanced at number 1 and then shifted her gaze to the man who had stood up angrily. At this moment, most of the demonic cultivators had been killed. The remaining ones had died under the attacks of the crowd. In this battle, their side had lost 1 or 2 people, and many of them had suffered different degrees of injuries. At this moment, everyone was looking at the scene in front of them. "What's going on?" one of the men asked. He was somewhat puzzled. Why did his own people start fighting? Number 1 narrowed his eyes and stared at the man who stood up after being kicked by him. He didn't say anything. He made a move in the dark, trying to kill number 9. Lei Xiao frowned. He had also seen that scene. Hearing this, everyone's expression changed slightly. They all looked at the man. So that's how it is. He was probably unconvinced. Only then did he want to kill that young man. Just as everyone was thinking about this, they saw a young man in a tight suit walk up to the man, step by step. "Do you want to kill me? I'll give you a chance." At this moment, the expression on Fengjiu's face was indifferent. He didn't have his usual naivety and stupidity. His entire person looked different. His entire body was filled with a dangerous aura, causing everyone's expression to change. They were a little surprised. Only the man's eyes were covered with hatred. When he saw the young man walking up to him fearlessly, he immediately let out a low growl. He clenched his fist and punched out. That punch contained 100% of the strength of a golden core cultivator. The sharp chi blade carried a terrifying force and struck out at an extremely fast speed. It was as if he wanted to kill his opponent with one punch. Chapter 1849. Let him deal with it himself. Lei Xiao placed a hand on Su San's shoulder and shook her head. When Su San saw this, he stepped back and stood there, watching. In the next moment, the youth caught the man's fist and turned it around with a flip of his hand. Crack! Ah! The sound of bones breaking could be heard. The man's knee was kicked, and he felt his knees and screamed in pain. What I hate the most is being plotted against. A gentle voice rang out coldly. Everyone saw the youth reach out and grab the burly man's throat, twisting his neck. Seeing the burly man's face turn red and pale, and finally being thrown to the ground without any signs of life, everyone could not help but gulp. Their gazes towards the youth were filled with a trace of horror. A foundation establishment cultivator? Or perhaps a golden core cultivator? He was actually able to easily neutralize 100% of the man's golden core power and killed him so easily. Could it be that his strength was not just at the golden core level? As this thought flashed through their minds, everyone felt a jolt in their hearts. One after another, thoughts sprang up in their minds. If he wasn't just a golden core cultivator, then why was he here? Why had he been captured? Why hadn't the ghost elder and the others noticed him? Could it be that he was stronger than the ghost elder and the others? Why are you all looking at me? The youth turned around and smiled, revealing a simple and innocent expression. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they wouldn't have believed that this youth could be so terrifying when he was ruthless. Ahem, let's go. Lei Xiao coughed softly. She composed herself and walked forward with the crowd. Number 1 glanced at Fengjiu, then walked forward without saying anything. Only the bearded man walked up to Fengjiu's side and sized him up from time to time, but he didn't ask anything. As the crowd continued to walk forward, the ghost elder was sitting with a few fairy realm cultivators outside. They were discussing something. Aside from those who died, we didn't find any other suspicious person. We've been guarding the forest for 2 days, but we still haven't found anything. Could it be that they've snuck in and were discovered by our people, so they escaped? A fairy realm cultivator looked at the ghost elder and said, "If that's the case, then it's one thing. I'm just worried that there might be someone hiding among us." Elder Ghost narrowed his eyes as he thought to himself. He went through each and every one of them in his mind, but he still didn't find anyone suspicious. After all, it was not easy to escape their eyes and move around under their noses. Moreover, the people who were caught were mostly rogue cultivators. They were not really capable people. If they were really capable, they would not have been caught by them. I don't think there's anything suspicious about the people we left behind. That person killed so many of our nascent soul cultivators. Why would he still dare to stay here? Another person said. He felt that the person who killed their people should have already left. The ghost elder thought deeply for a while, then said, "Pass down the order to increase our vigilance. If something like this happens again, no one will be able to bear the consequences." "Yes, we understand." The few of them replied and left. Chapter 1850. "Men," he shouted towards the outside. "Ghost Lord." A demonic cultivator walked in and bowed respectfully. "Find me a woman," he said with a gloomy voice. The demonic cultivator's eyes flickered when he heard that. He said, "Ghost Lord, the female cultivators from the all-pleasure sect that we captured last time are still here. Their appearances and figures are all first-rate. Why don't I bring them over?" "All-pleasure sect?" Elder Ghost narrowed his eyes and waved his hand. "Then what are you standing there for? Go." "Yes, yes," the demonic cultivator replied and hurried out. Not long after, the demonic cultivator brought 2 beautiful women with enchanting figures over. Perhaps it was because he had already told the 2 of them that the 2 women didn't have a trace of dissatisfaction on their faces. After entering, they even bowed in a proper manner. "Ghost Lord." The 2 women bent their knees and bowed. Their thin clothes were unable to hide their alluring bodies. In particular, when they lowered their heads, they revealed a charming and enchanting expression. This caused Elder Ghost's eyes to light up as he revealed a satisfied smile. "Come here," he called out as his naked gaze lingered on the 2 women. The 2 women responded in a coquettish voice, and then they walked forward and leaned into Elder Ghost's embrace. The demonic cultivator tactfully retreated when he saw this. However, even after he walked out, he could still hear the sounds of ecstasy from inside. When Fengjiu and the others came out, it was already noon the next day. Elder Ghost and the others were slightly surprised when they saw so many people come out alive after those people went in. After all, the people locked up in the death row prison were all savage people. There was no need to even talk about their strength. They originally thought that having a dozen or so people come out alive would already be a lot, but they never expected they actually only lost around 4 or 5 people after going in. As for the people standing in front of them, although each of them had different degrees of injuries, it was undeniable that they had survived after going through trials and tribulations. Number 9. Elder Ghost's gaze swept past everyone and landed on the young man at the front. "Yes." Fengjiu stepped forward without hesitation. The spectral elder stared at the young man in front of him. He could see that the young man was indeed growing. At the very least, There was no longer the timidity and fear between his brows like when they first met. His body also faintly gave off a vicious aura. He was very satisfied with this. Why don't you tell me why you only lost a few people after going in? There are even nascent soul cultivators in there. How did you survive? Reporting to Elder Ghost, your subordinates originally only cared about their own matters. However, as soon as we entered, 2 of us died. Especially towards the end, all of us were covered in injuries. At that time, your subordinates saw that I could not fight against them alone. In order to survive, I had everyone work together. In the end, we were lucky enough to survive. Hearing the young man's words, Elder Ghost narrowed his eyes and swept his gaze over everyone. Only then did he wave his hand and indicate, "Bring out the weapons and let them choose. Prepare to enter the next stage of training." Yes, the demonic cultivators behind him replied. Not long after, they brought out many weapons. Choose one for each of you during this period of training. Once you've all passed and become spies, there will be magic tools for you to protect yourselves. The demonic cultivator stared at everyone as he spoke. Chapter 1851. Fengjiu looked at all kinds of weapons and finally picked up a dagger. When he opened it, the dagger shone with a sharp, cold light. Thus, he took the dagger and retreated. Elder Ghost watched from the side. To them, the most suitable weapons were sabers and swords. Short weapons like daggers, axes, and scimitars weren't suitable for them. After all, if 2 people were to fight, the one with a long weapon would naturally have an advantage. He looked around and saw that most of the people had chosen either a sword or a saber. Only number 9 had chosen dagger. He couldn't help but ask, "Why did you choose a dagger when everyone else has chosen saber or a sword? Don't you know that a dagger is at a disadvantage when fighting an enemy?" When Fengjiu heard this, he looked at Elder Ghost and said, "Because this subordinate's wrist is thinner and my strength is weaker than theirs. Compared to a long sword or saber, this subordinate feels that a dagger is more suitable. Moreover, I can hide it on my body when I sleep. It's safer." When Elder Ghost heard his words, he felt that the first half of his words were quite reasonable. He nodded secretly. Indeed, this brat looked the smallest, and his physique couldn't compare to the others. His wrist indeed didn't seem to have much strength. Picking a long sword wasn't as good as picking a dagger. After all, a dagger was shorter and had a faster reaction time. However, when he heard the latter half of his words, the corner of his mouth couldn't help but twitch. He glanced at the brat with a gloomy gaze before looking away and waving his hand to indicate for him to return. After hearing his words, he felt that the first half of his words were just for show. He guessed that this brat only wanted to say the last 2 sentences. It seemed that this brat was quite afraid of death. He even thought of hiding a dagger on his body when he slept, just in case. When number 1, Lei Xiao, and the others heard Fengjiu's words, they all lowered their eyes, hiding the emotions that flashed through their eyes. That brat's wrist was thin? His strength was weak? How could he say that? He didn't even think about who it was that lifted a demonic cultivator up with one hand and smashed him to the ground, smashing him to death. Take them all away. Elder Ghost waved his hand and turned to leave after giving his orders. On the other side, Murong Yixian had sent people out to find out, but after Fengjiu left, he didn't get any news at all. He couldn't help but ponder, where could she have gone? Has there been any news recently? He asked a man in black who was kneeling in front of him. Replying to young master, "No." The black-robed man replied, "Has Naylan M.O. Chen returned?" Murong Yixian asked again. This subordinate sent people to guard the vicinity of the Naylan family, but they didn't see young Master Naylan return. However, they were discovered by the Naylan family. This subordinate had no choice but to transfer them back, to send someone to keep an eye on their city gate. If Naylan M.O. Chen arrives, he will definitely pass through the city gate. Fengjiu would definitely make a trip to the Naylan family. After all, her people had followed Naylan M.O. Chen here. Yes, that person replied, then left. On the other side, After Mo Chun and the others left, Xinyuan Mose also began to make arrangements. However, his imperial father hadn't come out of seclusion yet, so he couldn't leave even if he wanted to. He could only guard here and wait for his imperial father to come out of seclusion before making arrangements. Sitting in the palace, a portrait of Fengjiu was placed in front of him. Her red robes were flamboyant, and her eyes carried an aura of wanton confidence. Her demonic charm and carefree aura blended together, vividly portraying her spirit. Chapter 1852. At this moment, he probably couldn't imagine that Fengjiu had snuck into the place where the Temple of Dark Night trained their spies. Master! Hui Lang came in from outside and looked at Xinyuan Mose sitting in the palace. Xinyuan Mose looked up and put away the portrait on the table. He said in a low voice, "Speak." The people we sent out came back with a piece of news. They said that the people from the Dark Knight Temple are going against the Phoenix Dynasty and our Xinyuan Dynasty because of one person. Grey Wolf took out the letter and handed it over. He said, "The details are all in here." Xinyuan Mose erased the mark on the letter and took it out to read. His eyes narrowed. "Send people to investigate this person and see why they are targeting us. Also, tell the people hiding in the Temple of Dark Night to bide their time and wait for the right time." Master, don't worry. I've already sent people to investigate in secret after receiving the news. The people hiding in the Temple of Dark Night haven't made a move. But Master, what else does the letter say? Hui Lang asked curiously. He knew some information, but he didn't know much about the letter. Xinyuan Mose glanced at him and handed the letter to him. Hui Lang took a look and couldn't help but cry out. The people of the Temple of Dark Night are really wicked. They actually secretly caught some loose cultivators and planned to train them to infiltrate the 4 great immortal sects. However, these loose cultivators weren't trained from a young age. Can they be trained to be their people? The Temple of Dark Night has its own methods. If they weren't confident, they wouldn't have caught loose cultivators to train. Xinyuan Mose stood up and walked down with his hands behind his back. As he walked down, he said, "From what I know, the Temple of Darkness has a poison called the heart-eroding pill. When this poison is first taken, it's like poison. You have to take the antidote regularly to suppress it, but after a period of time, this poison will make you lose your mind and become an absolute death warrior who will only obey orders. These loose cultivators must have also taken the heart-eroding pill. I think that the moment they become elite death warriors, they will also become death warriors without emotions and desires. Using these death warriors to infiltrate the 4 great immortal sects as spies, as long as they aren't discovered, they won't have to worry about betrayal." Xinyuan Mose said and looked at the sky outside the palace with narrowed eyes. So powerful? Hui Lang was in disbelief. Not only that, the people trained by the Temple of Dark Night are probably no worse than ours. Xinyuan Mose said and turned to look at Hui Lang. "We don't have any forces in the Uppers' territory, so I won't go there yet. However, I'm going to let you first pick an elite team from our SPIC and bring them there." Grey Wolf was startled and hurriedly asked, "Master, do you want me to bring people over to take care of everything? There's no big deal here. When you get there, ask about Fengjiu. I want to know her safety," he ordered in a deep voice. Hearing this, Grey Wolf immediately replied, "Yes, Master, don't worry. I will go and prepare immediately." Saying this, he bowed and left. There were many people in the Temple of Yin who were above the nascent soul stage and even above the fairy realm. Since they were going to the Uppers continent, they naturally had to be above the nascent soul stage. "Ing-yi," Xinyuan Mose called. In the dark, Ing-yi walked out in a flash. "Master." Chapter 1853. He took a step forward and said, "This subordinate was just about to report to Master that the news of these people has been investigated. Originally, they had entered their respective sects, but later, because of their performance during the sect selection, they were selected by the Upper Continent's 4 sects to be accepted as disciples." "Oh," Xinyuan Mose was slightly surprised. The four of them were selected by the four sects? Yes, Luo Fei, Ning Lang, Song Ming, and Duan Yi were all selected. Only Bai Xiao, who is good at beast taming, is nowhere to be found. Yi said respectfully. Since they're in the upper continent, they'll meet Fengjiu sooner or later. She's the one who trained them. With them in the four sects, it'll be easier for her to do anything in the future. Xinyuan Mose paused for a moment, then said, "Tell Hui Lang about this. Tell him to tell her about the four of them when he has news about Fengjiu." "Yes," Yi replied, and retreated into the darkness again. On the other side, in one of the four sects, the Cloud Jade Immortal sect, two children, one big and one small, were practicing swordsmanship with wooden swords in their hands on a mountain peak. Two old men stood not far away. One of the old men stroked his beard and nodded with a satisfied look on his face. If Fengjiu and the others were here, they would definitely recognize the two children. The older one was Yang, and the younger one was Fengyi. After the two of them were rescued, they were brought to the Cloud Jade Immortal sect and were apprenticed to the Su Wu Immortal Lord. These two children have only been learning for a few months, but they're already familiar with the swordsmanship. "Senior brother, you really have good taste," the old man next to him said to the Su Yuan Immortal Lord with a smile. "Ha! It's all thanks to that old man Tianjizi. The last time I went to his place, I asked him, and he pointed me in that direction. I didn't expect that after searching for so long, I finally found them." The old man narrowed his eyes with a smile, his face full of gratification. "If I nurture these two children well, I will have a successor. These two children have extraordinary temperaments, especially the younger one. His appearance is even more outstanding. I'm afraid he's not from an ordinary family, right?" The old man next to him asked. His gaze fell on Fengyi in front of him. "I saved them on the way. I don't know which family they belong to. However, these two children are destined to be my master and disciple, but they are not related to me. If they stay with their relatives, I'm afraid it will be difficult for them to survive. It's better to let them go down the mountain to look for their relatives in the future." The Void Immortal Lord stroked his beard as he spoke. He glanced at the two children and said, "By the way, didn't the four major sects send people out to search for the Star of the Phoenix? How come I heard that there are already some clues? The news is about a girl from the Sky Sun sect. It is said that this girl was born with a blessing from the heavens. No matter if it is her talent or her temperament, she is a phoenix among humans. Moreover, her appearance and bearing are both excellent. In addition, it is said that this girl has the mark of a phoenix on her body. Thus, she has been determined to be the Star of the Phoenix. Currently, the Sky Sun sect has listed her as an important target of protection." "Oh," the Void Immortal Lord replied thoughtfully. "However, as far as I know, wasn't Tianjizi's disciple, Nalanamo Chun, ordered to protect the Star of the Phoenix? Is he with that girl?" Chapter 1854. That's strange. If that woman is really the Star of the Phoenix, why isn't Nalanamo Chun with her? The Void Immortal Lord pondered and asked, "Did Tianjizi reveal any information?" "Ha! It's not like Senior Brother doesn't know that unless Tianjizi is willing to say it, it's useless for anyone to ask. The Sky Sun sect master sent someone to Heavenly Mountain, but he didn't say anything in the end." The old man chuckled and shook his head. "However, I think it's better to let nature take its course. When the time is right, perhaps the Star of the Phoenix will appear even if we don't look for her." The voices of the two gradually became softer. When their voices could no longer be heard, Fengyi, who was practicing his sword, turned his quick-witted eyes. Only when he saw that the two of them had walked far away did he stop. Yang. Master has already left." Fengyi's soft voice was lowered with a hint of excitement as she spoke softly. Yang stopped and looked at the place where the two people were originally standing. Then he looked at Fengyi and said stiffly, "We still have to practice the sword." Ever since he was in danger, he knew that he had to work hard to protect the people he wanted to protect. Therefore, he learned whatever Master taught him and never slacked off. But Yang Yang, I miss father and mother. The little guy's mouth flattened, and his pair of bright eyes suddenly became watery, like a pitiful little puppy. Father and mother haven't seen me for so long. They must miss me. Moreover, I miss them too very, very much. Yang Yang looked at him and thought for a while. Master said that when we grow up and have the ability to protect ourselves, we can go down the mountain. How old is grown up? Do I have to be as tall as my brother to be considered grown up? The little guy gestured with his hands. He raised one hand high and wanted to describe Feng Zhao's height. However, he was short and could only do that. Other than growing up, you also have to become very powerful. If you can be as powerful as Sister Feng, then you can sneak down the mountain without growing up. Yang Yang said and thought of the most powerful person in his heart, Feng Jiao. In his opinion, no one was better than her. Is this the Xiao Jiao that I want to call my niece? Little Feng Ye's attention was immediately diverted. He was most curious about this niece whom he didn't recognize but was older than him in terms of seniority. However, he didn't know what she looked like. Yes, Sister Feng is very powerful. Yang Yang nodded. When he spoke of Feng Jiao, the expression on his face changed. His eyes were filled with unconcealable admiration and respect. Yang Yang, tell me about Xiao Jiao. I want to know. He tugged on Yang Yang's sleeve, his soft voice filled with curiosity. Practice your swordsmanship first. I'll tell you when you're done, Yang Yang said as she retreated and got into her fighting stance. Seeing this, little Feng Ye could only agree. He picked up the wooden sword and started practicing again. He secretly made up his mind to practice hard and go down the mountain as soon as possible to find his father and mother. At the same time, in another mountain in the Cloud Jade Immortal sect, Duan Yi, who was in seclusion, walked out of his cave abode. A young man in black came up to him. Master, this is the news from the other side. Chapter 1855. After Feng Jiao left, the few of them entered the sects of the 8 great empires under the arrangements of their respective families. Not long after, they were selected to enter the 4 great immortal sects of the upper continent. After becoming apprentices, they were ordered by their masters to cultivate in seclusion. They were completely oblivious to the outside world. However, they did not expect to receive such news when they came out of seclusion today. Looking at the thick stack of papers in his hand, he walked to the stone table outside the cave and sat down. He read through them one by one. From initial shock to the end, he let out a sigh of relief. His heart, which had been in his throat, finally relaxed after reading the latest news. As long as Feng Jiao was fine, it was fine. Even if her Phoenix dynasty was destroyed, it would be easy for her to rebuild it with her strength. However, from the information inside, after the Phoenix dynasty was destroyed, the various large clans rose up, and the empire system should have been abolished. However, this was also good. For someone like her, it was impossible for her to stay in such a small empire forever. When he received this news, he believed that Luo, Fei, and the others would also receive this news. Their strength was originally on par with each other. Now that they had entered the 4 great immortal sects, he wondered how strong they were now. Continue investigating. I want to know where she is now. Duan Yi put away the information and waved his hand to signal the black-clothed youth to leave. Yes, the black-clothed youth responded and left in a flash. 3 months later, in the Heavenly Sun Immortal sect, one of the 4 great immortal sects, thunder suddenly rumbled in the sky. Immediately after, 3 thunderbolts struck a mountain below. Each thunderbolt was extremely powerful and attracted the people in the Heavenly Sun Immortal sect to come out to take a look. Look, it's the sound from the green bamboo peak. Someone is advancing. A normal advancement would not attract such thunderbolts. I'm afraid it's at least a golden core cultivator advancing to the nascent soul stage. The 3 thunderbolts have passed. Look at the clouds on the green bamboo peak. Among the peaks, a 7-colored rainbow appeared on one of the peaks. The clouds were like 5-colored clothes floating on the peak. Faintly, there seemed to be celestial music. I heard that a few months ago, the Cloud Jade Immortal Sect and the other two Immortal Sect had disciples advancing to the nascent soul stage. At that time, the sky was also extraordinary and eye-catching. It is said that the disciples who advanced were selected from the sects of the 8 great empires. Could it be that the one who has the chance to advance in the Green Bamboo Peak is Senior Songming? It should be. Senior Brother Song's talent was praised by the sect master. Although he rarely shows himself, he is already known as a rare genius of our sect. His future is limitless. Among the disciples' discussions, the Green Bamboo Peak's Peak Master, and he nodded with gratified after seeing the clouds in the sky. He knew that the disciple he had taken a fancy to was no ordinary person. Given enough time, he would definitely become the pillar of their sect. The clouds in the sky lasted for about an hour before dispersing. After the clouds dispersed, a cave in the middle of the Green Bamboo Peak slowly opened. Song Ming, who was wearing a sect robe, walked out from inside. As soon as he came out, he saw his master standing outside the cave. Disciple greets master. He took a step forward and bowed respectfully. Disciple did not disappoint master. I have advanced to the mid-stage, nascent soul stage. Chapter 1856. Not bad, not bad. He patted Song Ming's shoulder in relief. Since you've already entered the mid-nascent soul stage, you can take your time. He was very happy to see that his disciple had such a promising future. Now that he had such a cultivation, he believed that in a few years, his strength would increase even more. Song Ming smiled, but in his heart, he wondered how Duan Yi and the others were doing now. After sending off his master and the people who came to congratulate him, he summoned the shadow guard beside him. Master! A man dressed in black appeared beside him. Song Ming glanced at that person, then asked, "What's the news recently?" Thus, the shadow guard handed over a stack of information to him. "These are the things that Master asked me to pay attention to." Song Ming took it and looked through it. His brows furrowed slightly, and he only put it away after he finished reading all the information. "If there's any news about Fengjiu, immediately send it to me." "Yes," the shadow guard replied, then left in a flash. Song Ming stood with his hands behind his back, looked at the sky, and muttered, "I didn't expect so many things to happen. However, if it's her, I'll just treat it as an experience. I didn't expect Duan Yi and the others to have also entered the nascent soul stage." Thinking of this, the corners of his lips curled up, and a smile appeared on his face. Among the information, there was also news about the Phoenix Star. From knowing Fengjiu to being acquainted with her, they naturally knew who this Phoenix Star referred to. However, what they didn't expect was that the Heavenly Sun Immortal Sect seemed to have mistaken a female disciple of their sect as the Phoenix Star. This way, the hidden forces wouldn't target Fengjiu, and she would be safer. However, he didn't know where she was after not seeing her for so long. Thinking of that woman who made people sigh in admiration, the smile on his face deepened. There would be a chance to meet her again. In the blink of an eye, another month passed. At this time, Xinyuan Mo's of the Xinyuan Empire had already brought people to the upper reaches of the continent after his father came out of seclusion. During these 3 months, Emo Chun waited for Fengjiu at the Nalan residence. However, day after day passed, there was still no news of her. Even Lung Shuang and Lung Hua were quickly developing their forces in secret under Emo Chen's arrangements. At the same time, they also inquired about their master's whereabouts. However, there was still no news at all. "Why hasn't master contacted us?" Luo Yu asked Du Fan and the others worriedly. He looked at them and saw that they were all busy with their own things. He then asked again, "Do you guys think that master? Did something happen to him?" As soon as he said this, a few people's gazes. "What are you talking about? Who is master? How could something happen to him?" "I think there must be something holding master back, so he didn't contact us." "Not bad. Let's take care of things and wait for master to come back. When master appears, she will definitely look for us." Hearing their words, Du Fan smiled and nodded. "Yes, I think so too. We don't have to worry about master. I think something must have happened to her, or she can't contact us. However, her safety shouldn't be a problem. Have you forgotten that she still has a few contracted beasts by her side? That you're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.